Adele, the clan leader, shatters Desmond's world with a single, devastating decree: he is to be cast out, exiled from the clan forever. The words hang in the air, a fog of disbelief clouding his mind as he struggles to comprehend the verdict. Desperate, he pleads for a reason, for any explanation for this sudden betrayal. But Desmond's simple question only serves to unleash the torrent of fury that has been simmering within Adele. With venom in his voice, Adele lays the blame for their last dungeon failure squarely at Desmond's feet, branding him an incompetent enchanter and leaving him utterly speechless. Desmond's mind races, desperately trying to form a defense, recalling the scent of danger he had detected, the warning he tried to give before being silenced. His protest is cut short as an object is hurled at his head, the sharp impact silencing his plea with a jolt of pain. Enraged, Adele seizes him violently, demanding he take responsibility for his own failures. He accuses Desmond of trying to pin the blame on him, spitting the word ungrateful for his own magical incompetence. He reminds Desmond of the charity he showed by ever letting him join, his threat turning chillingly lethal until a woman's voice cuts through the tension, commanding Adele to stop. She calmly warns him that such savagery is unacceptable, a line that should never be crossed outside the chaos of a dungeon. Adele's frustration boils over as Desmond gazes up at his savior, Marina. Ignoring the warning, Adele throws Desmond to the cold, hard ground. He hurls one last insult before Marina changes the subject, her piercing gaze fixed on Desmond as she asks about his unique scouting method. He reveals his secret, an enhanced sense of smell, a technique that causes a flicker of recognition in her eyes. But her expression quickly darkens into a mask of contempt. She accuses him of lying, completely discrediting his ability as a cheap trick. It's real, Desmond insists, pleading with her to understand that his magic is simply different, a power that doesn't conform to their rigid standards. Marina scoffs at his pathetic power, pointing out that a truly competent enchanter would possess strength far beyond his own. With an air of cold superiority, she reminds him that the clan's reputation as the supernovas is at stake. Siding with Adele, she coldly declares that their team has no room for dead weight. Defeated, Desmond can only mutter a quiet warning. He tells them that without his help, the clan will face a peril they cannot possibly overcome. Adele merely steps closer, dismissing his words as the ramblings of a desperate man. As another warrior steps into the circle, Adele reveals the final, crushing blow: he has already found Desmond's replacement. The warrior calls for the new recruit, and Desmond, still on the floor, watches in disbelief as a smiling figure emerges from the shadows. A self-assured, B-rank mage introduces herself as the clan's new enchanter, her confidence a stark contrast to Desmond's utter humiliation. With a radiant smile, she expresses her absolute delight at the honor of joining the famed Sword Clan. Adele places a heavy hand on Desmond's shoulder, a gesture of dominance, looking down on him with a gaze filled with contempt and superiority. The leader taunts him, sneering that the arrival of a higher-ranked mage renders any of his complaints utterly meaningless. Marina joins the mockery, her cruel, satisfied smile confirming his dismissal with a chilling finality. Even the warrior accuses him of being a parasite, leeching off the clan's power for his own gain, as the entire team glares at him with unified disdain. His spirit broken, Desmond finally accepts his fate and, with a resigned look, decides to leave his past behind. As he walks towards the exit, the sounds of their celebration and their demands that he leave his equipment behind echo in his ears. But just before he vanishes, his eyes flash open, revealing an intense, ethereal blue glow, a silent promise of a hidden power they have foolishly unleashed. His hidden gift is finally revealed: the Appraisal Eye, a rare ability to perceive the world in cold, hard numbers. He grimly acknowledges that without his enchantments, his own power level is barely enough to set foot in a C-rank dungeon. A wave of nostalgia washes over him, a painful echo of the past. He remembers the promise they made as fresh-faced rookies, a vow to reach the pinnacle of power together. The betrayal strikes him anew, a fresh, agonizing wound. He regrets ever believing they were true comrades as he turns his back on the city, venturing into the lonely countryside to escape the ghosts of his former life. Seated in solitude, he contemplates a future shrouded in uncertainty. He knows survival is impossible without a party, yet the sting of betrayal is too sharp, and the very thought of trusting another team feels like an insurmountable mountain. His somber reflection is shattered by an adventurer who trips and tumbles spectacularly nearby. The man's eyes go wide with terror as he spots a mage in the distance, muttering frantically about the presence of a catalpus, as if summoned by his fear. An imposing B-rank magical beast erupts from the tree line, confirming their absolute worst fears. The D-rank adventurer is consumed by panic, while his mage companion's attempts to calm him are utterly futile. With a flash of confidence, the mage announces she is B rank and begins casting a strength enhancement spell on her terrified partner. But the beast is lightning fast. It lunges forward, sending the warrior flying through the air before the mage's stunned and disbelieving eyes. Now, the monstrous catapult looms over the two adventurers, who are completely paralyzed with fear as the creature opens its cavernous jaws, poised to devour them whole. As they stare into the abyss, a bitter memory surges through Desmond's mind. He recalls the scorn of his old team, who never understood the depth of his power, mocking his magic for only increasing stats by a mere 20 points. Fueled by a new resolve, Desmond raises his staff, which ignites with an intense, emerald green energy, his expression now one of cold determination. He invokes his own enhancement spell, and a powerful magical aura instantly envelops the two-cornered adventurers. They are stunned by the sudden surge of overwhelming power that courses through their veins just as the beast lunges to attack. The warrior, now imbued with impossible strength, meets the impact with a newfound grit, managing to deflect the beast's charge and stop its advance cold. The catapult staggers back, roaring with absolute fury at being repelled by prey it had dismissed as weak. The two adventurers share a look of utter disbelief, unable to comprehend the source of this miraculous power. The beast, now enraged beyond reason, ignores its original quarry and charges directly at Desmond. Unflinching, Desmond casts another enchantment. The warrior becomes a blur, moving with incredible speed to land a devastating wound on the beast, his movements guided by Desmond's magic. With a steady voice, Desmond reveals the truth that was once mocked. His magic goes far beyond a simple increase of 20 points. His power doesn't add, it multiplies stats by 20. A secret his old party was too arrogant to ever comprehend. The warrior stares at his own hands, awestruck by the godlike power he just wielded. Desmond lets out a weary sigh as the adventurers celebrate their impossible victory against a vastly superior foe. He reflects on all the times he tried to explain his true ability, lamenting that they were always too proud to listen. As he is lost in thought, the warrior he saved approaches to offer his heartfelt thanks. The white-haired mage watches him from a distance, utterly intrigued by the mysterious enchanter. A thought crosses her mind. Could this man be the legendary Desmond she had only heard stories about back in the bustling city? Desmond finds himself standing before a guild board plastered with requests. With a heavy sigh, he accepts the harsh truth of his new reality to keep challenging the dungeons. He must find a new team. He has to start over. He braces himself for the daunting task of finding a new clan. The world is a tapestry of dungeons, ancient ruins scattered across the lands, each one a silent invitation for exploration. Within their depths lie forgotten knowledge and treasures beyond imagination. This is the very nature of their world. Adventurers gamble their lives for fortune and power. Desmond understands that to delve deeper into these perilous dungeons, a team is not just an advantage, it's a necessity. But a glance at his own status window sends a chill of despair through him. No sane party would ever recruit him. His class, an enchanter, cursed him with abysmal strength and paradoxically, 0 points in intelligence. This crippling flaw chained him to the most rudimentary of spells, a barrier he had never managed to break. As he wallows in his misfortune, a figure clad in gleaming armor halts before him. A woman's voice cuts through his thoughts, asking if he seeks a new clan. With a heavy heart, Desmond confesses that he does, having just been cast out from his last one. A flicker of outrage sparks in the woman's voice. She scoffs at the sheer blindness of his former team, unable to fathom how they could overlook his true talent. Her impassioned defense leaves Desmond utterly speechless, his mind reeling. As his gaze lifts, his breath catches, he recognizes the legendary adventurer, Cynthia, the very mage whose life he had once saved. Cynthia offers him a warm, familiar smile, a silent testament to a bond forged long ago. Memories flood back of a shared childhood, and Desmond is struck by the realization that 3 long years have passed since they both left their hometown behind. A warmth spreads between them as they reconnect, the unbreakable bond of their youth instantly rekindled. But then, something catches his eye. Desmond's gaze is captured by a gleaming insignia on Cynthia's armor. A wave of astonishment washes over him as he identifies it, the unmistakable plate of an S-rank adventurer, the absolute zenith of their profession. A genuine, enthusiastic grin breaks across his face as he congratulates her. He reminds her that only a handful of adventurers in the entire world ever achieve such a prestigious status. The pyramid of power is steep, with S rank being the lonely peak reserved for the absolute elite. With pure, unadulterated pride in his voice, Desmond tells her how incredibly proud he is to call her his childhood friend. His heartfelt praise brings a soft blush to her cheeks, and she shyly confesses that hearing those words from him means the world to her. Cynthia's sudden vulnerability catches Desmond completely off guard, leaving him flustered and momentarily forgetting how to respond. A faint blush colors his own cheeks as he's struck by how breathtakingly beautiful Cynthia has become. Recalling that she was always 2 years his senior, he remembers then, with a pang in his chest, the true reason he ever became an adventurer to one day become a man worthy of standing beside her. A distant memory surfaces, a promise whispered between two children, a vow to one day conquer an S-rank dungeon together. But now, Desmond can only assume she has long since forgotten that childish pact, and he feels a surge of foolishness for having clung to it for so long. Her voice pulls him from his thoughts, her gaze shifting toward the city walls as she speaks the name Espatada. She explains that Espatada is the sensational rookie team on everyone's lips, the one that has already conquered multiple B-rank dungeons. A knowing smile plays on her lips. Then, Cynthia reveals the truth that shocks him to his core. The clan's meteoric success was never because of them, but solely because of him. Her declaration leaves Desmond utterly baffled, the words not making any sense. She insists, her voice firm, that his enchantments were always in a league of their own, stunning Desmond, who believed the true nature of his power was a closely guarded secret. A wave of warmth and happiness washes over him. She saw his worth when no one else did. Seeing her chance, Cynthia proposes that they should finally team up, now that he is unbound. With a blush she can't quite hide, Cynthia formally invites Desmond to join her own clan. The offer stuns him, and she excitedly adds that the entrance trial is scheduled for the very next day. With absolute certainty shining in her eyes, she moved closer, assuring him that she had no doubt he would conquer the entrance exam. The words entrance exam echoed in Desmond's mind, and for the first time, he gave the idea serious thought. Yet, a wave of doubt washed over him. How could a mere D-rank adventurer possibly pass? But the thought of joining Cynthia's clan was a powerful motivator. A genuine smile spread across his face as he accepted the challenge, catching his friend completely by surprise. Overjoyed, Cynthia insisted they go sign up that very instant, giving him no room to object. She grabbed his hand, her excitement pulling him along through the bustling city streets. And though a part of him felt utterly unprepared, her infectious joy was a current he couldn't resist, and he found himself smiling with her. Suddenly, his smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of anxiety as he asked where exactly they were rushing off to. Cynthia halted, a touch of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. With a slightly apologetic tone, she revealed the name of her clan, Chevalier Garden. The color drained from Desmond's face. He knew that name far better than she could ever imagine. It was whispered in every corner that Chevalier Garden was the largest, most formidable clan in the entire city of Bristol. But it was more than that. They were a global powerhouse, the force with the most adventurers in the world, standing on the very precipice of conquering an S-rank dungeon. Crushed by the sheer weight of that legacy, Desmond immediately tried to retract his words and back away. However, Cynthia's grip on his hand tightened, a silent refusal to let him flee. She called him by the name only she ever used, a relic of their shared childhood. "Des," she whispered, leaning in close, her voice a gentle command. "It's time we fulfilled the promise we made when we were kids." Her words, her proximity, sent a jolt through him, leaving him blushing and utterly speechless as the word promise reverberated in his soul. A forgotten memory surged forth, a vision from his youth, confirming that Cynthia had never forgotten their pact to conquer an S-rank dungeon side by side. Desmond's heart began to hammer against his ribs, a frantic, unsteady rhythm. A deep blush crept up his neck as he realized just how much that promise still meant to her. Then, just as suddenly, a cold wave of panic crashed over him as the true scale of his agreement set in. But his doubts were no match for her resolve. Cynthia, utterly convinced of his potential, dragged him toward the clan's impossibly imposing fortress. At last, the day of the admission exam dawned upon the majestic headquarters of Chevalier Garden. After registering, he was handed a tag bearing the number 55 and instructed to wait for the trial to commence. Desmond nervously clutched the participant number, feeling like an imposter in a world he didn't belong to. Stepping inside, he was awestruck by the opulent interior, a grand hall that rivaled any royal castle. He scanned the sea of determined faces, a stark reminder that the competition to join the world's strongest clan was nothing short of overwhelming. Holding his number, Desmond marveled at the fact that Cynthia was part of such an incredibly prestigious and powerful organization. It was soon revealed that the test was deceptively simple: form teams of 4 and defeat 10 goblins within a D-rank dungeon. While the task itself seemed almost elementary, a single, More pressing question occupied his thoughts. Would Cynthia be there to watch? Abruptly, a clear voice cut through the murmuring crowd, announcing the official start of the event and capturing the undivided attention of every applicant. Every head turned, looking up toward a lone figure standing with an air of authority on the upper balcony. A woman with glasses announced that they would now receive a greeting from Cynthia McDonald and the commander of the 1st Brigade. A wave of excited whispers swept through the applicants, while Desmond felt the world beneath him give way. His face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated disbelief as his mind struggled to process what he had just heard. The revelation struck him like a physical blow, leaving him utterly stunned and incapable of comprehending the impossible truth of the situation. An organizational chart reveals Cynthia's true position, not merely a member, but the commanding officer of the 1st Brigade. This is the clan's most elite unit, a legendary force composed of just 5 of the world's most formidable adventurers. From below, Desmond's gaze is locked on Cynthia, who cuts an imposing figure on the grand balcony. With a solemn expression and armor that gleamed under the light, she radiated the undeniable aura of a seasoned commander, drawing gasps of awe from the other applicants. Desmond, his face still flushed with color, is utterly lost in a daze as she begins to address the assembled crowd. She thanks them for their dedication and challenges them to unleash their full potential in the upcoming trial. Her inspiring words stoking the flames of ambition in the crowd, who answer with a unified roar of determination. Yet amidst the electric atmosphere, Desmond remains frozen in place, a statue of disbelief. His mind struggles to bridge the impossible gap between the girl he once knew and the powerful leader standing before him. Following her speech, the adventurers begin to disperse throughout the great hall, a low hum of anticipation filling the air as they prepare for the exam to commence. He catches snippets of conversation, hushed whispers of admiration for Cynthia, and fervent dreams of one day joining her prestigious brigade. And while a part of him swelled with pride for her, her monumental success felt distant, almost like a story from another world. The vast chasm between their lives leaves him feeling profoundly alone, until a familiar voice slices through his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. In a flash, Cynthia is standing before him, her face obscured by a hood. As she thanks him personally for attending, the sudden recognition sends a jolt of panic through Desmond. He can scarcely believe that the commander herself is speaking directly to him, and her abrupt appearance leaves every other applicant in the vicinity utterly speechless. A wave of excited whispers ripples through the crowd, confirming that the legendary Cynthia is truly walking among them. The other hopefuls stare, wondering who this boy could possibly be, as she explains that she simply couldn't resist coming to see him in person. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, she leans in and plants a soft kiss on his cheek, wishing him luck in the trial. Completely flustered and unable to form a coherent thought, he barely manages to stammer out a thank you as she turns to leave. Desmond stands there, motionless, the single thought echoing in his mind: the commander of the most powerful clan came here just to encourage him. A newfound fire of determination surges through him, gripping his staff tightly. He is now ready to give his absolute all, driven by the hope of joining Cynthia's clan. As he strides confidently toward the testing area, a sharp shout stops him in his tracks, and a blonde girl appears before him, catching him completely off guard. She asks if he is number 55. Still reeling from the sudden interruption, he looks on in amazement as the girl reveals her own token, bearing the very same participant number. In that moment, Desmond understands. It seems fate has already chosen his teammates for the exam. The vibrant swordswoman introduces herself as Rin, a frontline attacker brimming with battle-ready energy. Just as Desmond opens his mouth to reply, another figure glides toward them, completing their trio. It is an elven mage who calmly introduces herself as Dorothy. She too, she reveals, holds the number 55. Dorothy's impossibly gentle voice renders him momentarily speechless, struggling to find his own. Suddenly, a formidable shadow falls over them, and an imposing figure interrupts their introductions. A stout dwarf with a powerful build announces himself as Garen, the shield bearer and the 4th member of Team 55. Utterly overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events, Desmond just manages to stutter his own name. Rin welcomes him with a bright smile, and he quickly adds that they can call him Des. Their newly formed party is then guided to the gaping maw of a sinister dungeon, its entrance eerily carved into the shape of a colossal skull. An examiner's voice announced that the fearsome skull dungeon would be the stage for their test, and the mission was deceptively simple. They were tasked to either defeat 10 goblins or retreat to conclude the exam. Desmond, ever the strategist, analyzed the situation, warning that despite his D-rank status, they had to proceed with extreme caution, but his words were utterly lost on Rin, who charged into battle with boundless, reckless energy. Desmond scrambled desperately to stop her, a cold fear gripping him that her impulsiveness would endanger them all. The moment he stepped inside, he overheard other aspirants whispering that his team had absolutely no chance of passing. A sickening feeling grew in Desmond's stomach. Though the teams were random, something felt terribly wrong. He soon uncovered the horrifying truth. Team 55 was infamous, known as the most pathetic group in the exam's entire history. The news struck him like a physical blow, leaving him horrified by his own wretched luck as he watched Ren get giddy over a simple mushroom. At that moment, Desmond lost all hope of passing. As they ventured deeper into the dungeon's oppressive darkness, he couldn't help but wonder if he was cursed, fated to be shackled to incompetent teammates for eternity. The imposing, dreadful skull dungeon loomed before them, its maw open and ready to test their truly disastrous team. It was revealed that this dungeon was once a formidable B-rank threat, but that it was downgraded after its core was obliterated. Now, it was a mere D-rank husk, inhabited only by weak monsters like goblins. The sight stirred painful memories for Desmond, recalling his days in high-level dungeons where, despite their success, he was always left with the worst of the loot. He tried to pinpoint the moment his former comrades had begun to treat him with such utter contempt, racking his brain. He realized he didn't possess a single good memory of his old clan. His gaze shifted to his eccentric new companions, wondering how they earned the title of the worst team in history. With a heavy sense of trepidation, he decided to approach them, praying they weren't as hopeless as the rumors claimed. Out of the blue, Ren tackled him in an effusive and painfully enthusiastic greeting that sent him crashing to the stone floor. She cheerfully sat on top of him, mistaking his panicked expression for hunger and worry, and immediately tried to cheer him up. Ren offered him her personal snack like a sacred gift, boasting about how delicious it was before Desmond had even laid eyes on it. Resigned to his fate, Desmond took a bite of the bread, seeing no other option. To his utter shock, the taste was so divine it left him speechless, and completely, utterly impressed. The kind gesture triggered a bitter memory, a vision of his old team treating him like a servant, constantly demanding things and calling him useless. In stark contrast, he was now enjoying a snack, reflecting that with his old clan, he was never even given a moment to eat. Dorothy then timidly approached to offer him water, while Garan also showed a gruff sort of concern for his well-being. Moved by their simple and unexpected kindness, Desmond thanked them, his eyes brimming with a wave of unfamiliar emotion. A small, genuine smile graced his lips as he thought that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as terrible as everyone said. Filled with a newfound sense of curiosity, he asked his teammates why they had decided to take this daunting exam. Ren answered with infectious enthusiasm, explaining that she was the third daughter of a noble family from a rural province. She confessed that her dream had always been to become an adventurer, but her parents had different plans, wanting her to marry into another family. Now she was here, determined to become the greatest adventurer in the world to prove that her dream was not a mistake. Intrigued, Desmond then asked Garan why he had chosen the path of a shield-bearer, to which the stoic dwarf responded with a simple truth about his solemn protective role. Garan nobly declared that a man needs no reason to protect others, leaving Desmond completely stunned by his profound righteousness and realizing that his companions were, at their core, kind people. Turning to Dorothy, Desmond gently inquired about her own reasons for being here. She explained, her voice barely a whisper, that her only wish was to pass the exam and honor the kindness of her adoptive family at the esteemed Chevalier Garden. Desmond's heartfelt praise was too much for her. She recoiled in a flurry of embarrassment, feeling utterly unworthy of such words. A genuine smile finally broke through Desmond's hardened exterior as he saw the pure hearts of his companions. The moniker, the worst team. It had to be a cruel joke. They were all fundamentally good people. In a quiet moment of self-reflection, he conceded that his own motivation, a simple desire to catch Cynthia's eye, was the shallowest of them all. Still, he gripped his staff, a new fire kindling within him, poised to conquer the trials ahead. As the team drew together, Desmond's voice rang with newfound conviction, urging them to give their absolute best, forging a fragile bond of shared purpose, brimming with a sudden, unshakable confidence. He vowed to clear this test for Cynthia's sake, only for Garan to casually mention a speck of dirt on his shoulder. Desmond thanked him, but the dwarf's easygoing demeanor suddenly shattered with a pained groan. Without another word, Garan's body went limp, collapsing to the forest floor in a silent, unmoving heap. Desmond chuckled, assuming it was just a gag, and told him to cut the theatrics, but the dwarf remained still, and a cold seed of unease began to sprout within the group. The air grew thick with tension as Garan failed to respond. A chilling question hanging between them: was this some kind of twisted joke? Ren's terrified shriek that the dwarf wasn't breathing sent a jolt of pure panic through Desmond, who frantically called for a potion. But then, a deep, rumbling laugh erupted from the ground. The prank was exposed. Garan sat up, roaring with laughter and offering a clumsy apology for his little jest. Ren, however, sternly reminded him of their limited supply of potions. Desmond, still reeling, could only ask if spontaneously collapsing was a regular habit of his. The dreadful truth slammed into him as he grasped the reality his teammate was afflicted with a truly catastrophic weakness. To confirm his dawning horror, Desmond activated his Appraisal Eye. His gaze fell upon Ren, the swordswoman, and the numbers told a grim tale. Her strength was so pitifully low, she would struggle to fell even a single lowly goblin. His eyes then darted to Garan, their supposed shield, only to discover his vitality was so laughably fragile that one solid strike would undoubtedly spell his end. Dorothy, seeing the color drain from his face, asked with genuine concern if he was all right, clinging to a final shred of hope. Desmond turned his gaze to the team's mage. Analyzing Dorothy, he saw a glimmer of promise. Her intelligence was exceptionally high, a clear sign she could wield devastating offensive magic. Desmond offered a word of praise, but it only triggered her panic. "I can't," she cried. "Using my magic, it would kill me." She confessed in a voice laced with shame that her mana pool was so minuscule she could only manage a single cast per day. The brutal reality of their situation crashed down upon him. A hollow smile stretched across his face as despair began to set in. He saw it clearly now. Dorothy's mana registered at a paltry 8 points, an amount so trivial it was almost meaningless. At last, Desmond understood the cruel literal truth behind their infamous nickname, the worst team in history. He was saddled with an attacker who couldn't fight, a tank who couldn't take a hit, and a glass cannon of a mage who could only fire her weapon once a day. He concluded with bitter irony that he, with his own rudimentary magic, was just as much a part of this pathetic ensemble. A wave of terror washed over him. If he couldn't somehow empower them, they wouldn't just fail, they would be utterly wiped out, as if summoned by his fear. Ren suddenly hissed a warning, her senses detecting the approach of a goblin horde. Desperation clawed at him. "Don't move," he commanded, hoping to buy time for his enchantments. But Ren, deaf to his plea, let out a war cry and charged headlong into the fray, driven by the belief that the first strike is the only one that matters. Her blade rings out as it collides with a goblin, foregoing any magical support to charge headfirst into the fray, but her raw strength is no match for the creature. The goblin swats her aside with contemptuous ease, a grim confirmation of her pitifully low strength score of 6. Sprawled on the dirt, she flashes a shaky grin as if it's all part of the plan, while a wave of regret washes over Desmond. He'd been just as reckless, charging in without magical support. Amid the chaos, a lone goblin breaks from the pack, its eyes locking onto him, charging with deadly intent. A warning shout snaps him to attention, and his hands move in a desperate, fumbling attempt to conjure a spell. All he can see is the snarling face of death hurtling toward him. Just as he promised, Garan throws himself in the path of the attack, but his heroic intervention is cut short as a single, brutal blow from the goblin sends him crashing to the ground. A groan of pure exasperation escapes Desmond's lips as he glares down at the fallen dwarf, who can only stare back with a dazed, uncomprehending look. Reluctantly uncorking a precious potion, he pours it down Garen's throat while berating him for folding so easily. He couldn't help but question if the dwarf was truly cut out to be a protector. Instantly revived, Garon leaps to his feet and strikes a heroic pose, booming about his unwavering duty to shield his friends, leaving Desmond utterly speechless, clutching the now empty vial. Through gritted teeth, Desmond warns them they have just one potion remaining. Garon, ever the optimist, just gives him a confident thumbs up. But that flicker of confidence is extinguished in an instant as another goblin taps Garon, sending him crumpling to the floor once more. A pained, forced smile stretches across Desmond's face. The last of their healing potions was gone. Cold panic grips him. No healer, no potions. One more clean hit on anyone could spell disaster. And just as that thought crosses his mind, a flash of red armor appears as Ren leaps between him and an advancing goblin. She shoves him clear, taking the full force of the blow herself. Time seems to slow as Desmond watches in horror, his teammate's body absorbing the impact meant for him. Rushing to her side, he kneels, his heart pounding with concern. She's trying to play it off, gritting her teeth through the pain as if it were a mere scratch. He grabs her by the shoulders, his frustration boiling over. "What were you thinking? You're the damage dealer, not a shield," he yells, his voice laced with fear. A small, almost sheepish smile touches her lips. "You're right," she admits softly, before her eyes blaze with conviction. But I can't just stand back and watch my friends get hurt. The simple sincerity in her voice steals the air from his lungs. He'd seen her as reckless, but this was a profound, unexpected loyalty. Shaking off the moment, the strategist in him takes over. And what happens when that flimsy armor of yours gives out? What good are you to us then? What about your dream? Desmond presses. Becoming the greatest adventurer. For the first time. She hesitates, her gaze softening as she reveals what truly matters. That dream means nothing, she says, her voice unwavering. If I don't have my friends beside me. The declaration hits Desmond with the force of a physical blow, shattering his perception of her. Their quiet moment is shattered by Dorothy's panicked cry. There are more of them, 7 more, before anyone can react. Garon plants himself at the front of the group. Get behind me, he roars, his small frame a surprisingly solid wall. Garon, you fool, Desmond screams, his voice cracking with desperation. We have no more potions. The next hit you take will be your last. The dwarf slowly turns, and the look on his face is not one of fear, but of grim resolve. The sheer determination in Garon's eyes silences Desmond, whose own expression shifts from anger to a bewildered fear. I know I'm not the strongest, Garon admits, a sad smile touching his lips. But if my falling is what it takes to protect all of you, then so be it. I will be the shield, he declares, his voice resonating with purpose, but his heroic speech is cut short as Dorothy timidly tugs on Desmond's sleeve. Her knuckles are white as she grips her staff. Desmond, I only have enough mana for one more spell, she whispers, her voice trembling. A single spell. It wouldn't be nearly enough to take down the 7 new goblins, much less the 10 they needed to clear the trial. But I can use it to help us escape, she offers, willing to sacrifice her own test for their survival. Desmond's response is swift and absolute no. He pleads with her, his voice urgent, reminding her of the solemn promise she made to her adoptive parents to pass this exam at all costs. But Dorothy's knuckles turn white as she clutches her staff, her resolve hardening into steel. Through a determined gaze, she declares that a victory earned by abandoning her comrades would be a hollow, meaningless triumph. Her conviction strikes a chord deep within Desmond, who can only watch, stunned and moved by her unexpected loyalty. He struggles to comprehend this willingness to sacrifice everything for a team forged only moments ago. Faced with their unshakable camaraderie, he is left utterly bewildered, at a complete loss for words. His new allies stand before him, their expressions unified in a single, unwavering belief, explaining that the bonds of true friendship are not measured in time. Their words crash over him like a tidal wave, stealing the very breath from his lungs. He is utterly overwhelmed by emotion, and a single tear traces a path down his cheek just as the goblin horde finally charges. Yet, a strange, eager light dances in Ren's eyes. The dwarf, Garon, braces for the collision, his face a mask of pure strain as his teammates cry out in alarm. They watch in horror, seeing the dwarf is about to be completely swallowed by the tide of enemies. Garon shuts his eyes, absorbing the brutal impact, preparing for the inevitable end. But the end never comes. Instead, a shimmering barrier of water erupts around him, effortlessly repelling the goblins that crash against it. Stunned, the dwarf glances around, searching for the source of this impossible power that has just saved his life. The watery shield not only holds but violently shoves the entire goblin horde back. For a fleeting moment, Garon wonders if he somehow unlocked this power himself. An instant later, he knows it's not his own. As the realization dawns, his gaze, and that of the entire team, snaps to one person. They find Desmond, now enveloped in a soft, green aura, the protective magic flowing directly from him. His eyes are closed in deep concentration, channeling his power with a newfound unshakable calm. When he finally opens them, his gaze is clear, sharp, and filled with a resolve that wasn't there before. He has made his choice. The true prize is not just passing, but passing with them. In that moment, he understands this connection, forged in the heat of battle, is something he failed to build with his old team in an entire year. Stepping forward, he finally takes command, asking for their trust, their faith, and for them to follow his lead to secure their shared victory. As his power surges around him, he declares with absolute certainty that they will all emerge from this trial together. With a newfound confidence radiating from him, he assures them that if they commit to his plan, no one will be left behind. His attention then shifts to a stunned Dorothy. In a serious tone, he orders her to begin preparing her spell. She hesitates, her voice laced with doubt, reminding him she has only one attack left. Using it now would guarantee her failure. But then, the memory of his unwavering gaze, the silent plea for her trust, washes over her, clenching her staff. Dorothy makes her choice and nods in agreement. As the young mage begins to gather her formidable power, Desmond turns to issue his next commands. He tasks Ren and Garen with the crucial role of buying Dorothy the time she needs to complete the incantation. To Ren's astonishment, Desmond points her toward the front lines. Her eyes widen as she realizes he expects her to face the charging horde all by herself. Desmond meets her gaze, his expression unyielding, conveying all the faith he has placed in her abilities. But instead of fear, a wild, ecstatic grin spreads across Ren's face. She thrives on such a challenge. Accepting the impossible task with sheer euphoria, she hurtles forward to meet the wave of enemies. Two goblins leap toward her, their clubs raised high, ready to bring them crashing down. With a steely gaze, she warns them that they will advance no further. In an instant, her sword becomes a blinding flash of light. Crashing against the first goblin with overwhelming force, she transforms into a whirlwind of polished steel, carving a path through the swarming creatures. As the last one falls, the warrior pauses, her own eyes wide with shock at the sheer magnitude of her assault. The goblins are left broken and scattered, utterly unable to withstand the blade's ferocious onslaught. Serena stares in awe at the impossible results of her own actions. As the dust settles over the battlefield, she understands Desmond's aura had surged through her, amplifying her power and allowing her to achieve the impossible. It was a subtle enchantment, a spell woven by Desmond to bolster his teammates' strength. However, the battle was far from over. More goblins swarmed from the rear, a flanking maneuver threatening to overwhelm Garand. Desmond's voice cut through the chaos, ordering the dwarf to become their unbreachable rearguard. To aid him, Desmond channeled his magic once more, wrapping the dwarf in an aura that enhanced his physical might and vitality. The dwarf understood his solemn duty to protect Dorothy at all costs while she gathered the energy for her spell. Empowered by Desmond's magic, Garand slammed his shield into the ground, halting the goblin advance. He gritted his teeth, a low growl rumbling in his chest, as he resisted the savage onslaught with every ounce of his being. Behind this living fortress, Dorothy watched with anxious eyes as Garand held the line for her. Her concern rapidly hardened into a cold, sharp determination. Seeing her teammate's selfless sacrifice ignited a fire within her soul. Dorothy began to draw upon her own vast reserves of power, preparing to unleash her single most devastating spell. But then, Desmond issued a new, startling command. He pointed not at the enemy before them, but toward a dark, narrow passage on the cave's right side. She stared into the suffocating blackness, confused. He explained that he would amplify her magic, but she had to channel all her power into that single entrance. The strange order left her completely bewildered. Without waiting, Desmond unleashed his enchantment, flooding the mage's mind with raw power, sharpening her intellect and focus to a razor's edge. The effect was instantaneous. Dorothy's water magic surged to an unbelievable level. Its power, precision, and duration magnified beyond her wildest dreams. The mage was nearly crushed by the immense river of energy now flowing through her, a torrent she felt she could no longer control. Yet despite the rising panic, a profound sense of euphoria washed over her as she tasted such incredible power. To help her harness this raging storm, Desmond stepped in close behind her, placing his hand gently over hers on the staff. His voice was a calm anchor, asking her to trust him to guide the spell. The sudden closeness, combined with the overwhelming power thrumming between them, sent a deep blush across Dorothy's face, rendering her speechless. The mage tried to form a word, completely flustered by the intensity of the situation. Then, moving as one, they unleashed a devastating bolt of water, supercharged and aimed directly into the dark tunnel. Desmond calmly explained his plan was to eliminate the enemies lying in wait in the next room. He revealed that he had used his enhanced sense of smell to pinpoint more than 10 goblins hiding in that very area. The magical projectile screamed through the narrow passage, catching the goblins on the other side completely by surprise. The creatures barely had a moment to react to the incoming attack before the spell detonated with explosive, crushing force. Their success was absolute, ensuring they had far surpassed the required number of foes. A brief look of satisfaction crossed Desmond's face. He confirmed they had successfully defeated enough goblins to pass the trial. They both turned to look at the tunnel, now glowing with an eerie light that hinted at the carnage within. But suddenly, a single drop of cold sweat traced a path down Desmond's forehead as he recognized a terrible oversight. Desmond realized with dawning horror that he had overboosted Dorothy's spell, creating a raw, uncontrollable force of nature. The unleashed power was so immense, the resulting explosion didn't just damage the exam cave, it obliterated it entirely. Blinking in the sudden sunlight, the team found themselves standing amidst the smoking rubble of what was once the dungeon. Garan, still levitating from the residual magic, sheepishly apologized for getting carried away by the thrill of fighting alongside new friends. But Desmond was already panicking, convinced they would be instantly disqualified for annihilating the test site. Just then, an examiner appeared, looking shaken, and nervously told them not to worry. To their utter astonishment, the man declared that despite the catastrophic damage, they had officially passed the exam. The examiners, beads of sweat dotting their brows, confirmed they had completed the trial faster than any other team, a fact that left Desmond completely stunned. Ignoring the surrounding devastation, the examiner handed Desmond proof of their success, his voice filled with praise for the young mage. He was utterly amazed that a mere D-rank adventurer could wield such breathtaking power. With the certificate of approval clutched in his hand, Desmond breathed a sigh of profound relief as his teammates erupted in euphoric celebration behind him. Their journey now led them to the imposing fortress of the Adventurers Guild headquarters. Once inside the Grand Hall, they were presented with their official member cards. As a guild employee, congratulated them on passing the test and formally welcomed them to the Knight's Garden. Urging them to strive for greatness, the group huddled together, inspecting their new cards, a tangible symbol marking the beginning of their careers. Overwhelmed with joy, Rin couldn't contain herself, and she erupted into a jubilant celebration, her gratitude and excitement becoming infectious. She launched herself into a hug, catching a completely unsuspecting Desmond off guard and giving him all the credit for their incredible success. But their moment of pure joy was shattered the instant they locked eyes with the arrogant team that had belittled them before the exam. The entire atmosphere in the hall shifted, the celebratory air turning thick with whispers as other adventurers stared at them with suspicion. A single bead of sweat trickled down Desmond's forehead. Desmond could feel it in his gut. The attention fixed on them wasn't admiration, but something far more ominous. The whispers snaking through the crowd confirmed that this was the team that had cleared the exam in record-shattering time. Disbelief rippled through the hall. Everyone had written them off as the weakest team. Soon, rumors about Desmond's power began to spiral into absurd, legendary tales. But Desmond remained unfazed. Rin, beaming with pride, gave him a playful punch on the chest, telling him the whole team should be thrilled with their leader's newfound fame. She urged him to embrace the recognition he had rightfully earned. Garan quickly chimed in, adamantly confirming that Desmond's extraordinary enchantment magic had been the absolute key to their victory. Touched by the dwarf's earnest words, Desmond offered his sincere thanks for the support, but the young enchanter's grip tightened on his staff as he prepared to deflect the praise. With genuine humility, he explained that he was merely a support mage, and that their true success was forged through teamwork. Turning to his companions and attributing every ounce of glory to their shared trust and collective effort, Rin's face flushed, her eyes wide with emotion as his humble words washed over her. Completely overcome, she blurted out an unexpected marriage proposal, leaving Desmond utterly speechless. But just as quickly as it began, the celebration came to a sudden, somber halt. With a heavy heart, Desmond reminded them that their alliance was only for the exam, and that now they had to go their separate ways. The words cast a shadow over Dorothy's face, while Desmond found he couldn't meet his teammates' gazes. Rin and Garan stood in stunned silence, the reality of the team disbanding crashing down on them. Struggling to maintain her composure, Dorothy quietly explained that their next task was to find new teams, alone. But her stoic mask finally crumbles, revealing the raw emotion she feels about their parting. Visibly moved, she vows that she will never forget this team, admitting with heartfelt sincerity that it was the greatest one she had ever been a part of. But just as the bittersweet farewell hangs in the air, Rin cuts through the moment, brandishing her guild card and pointing to a critical detail they had all completely missed. One by one, the others pull out their own cards, their eyes widening in astonishment as they confirm Rin's discovery. The guild hadn't just passed them, it had officially registered them as a permanent team, binding their destinies together without a single word. The heavy air of goodbye evaporates in an instant, replaced by a wave of collective joy, as the realization dawns that their official status means their journey together is far from over. In a moment of pure elation, the group begins to reintroduce themselves, forging their bond anew with a fresh wave of enthusiasm and uncontainable happiness. Wasting no time, Rin immediately proposes a celebration to mark their official union. Her suggestion of a victory party, complete with plenty of drinks, is met with instant and roaring approval from Garan, and the infectious excitement quickly spreads through the rest of the group. For a brief moment, Desmond hesitates, a thought of telling Cynthia crossing his mind. But he watches his new comrades already marching off with unbridled enthusiasm. He quickly pushes the thought aside, recalling that his new, lowly rank makes contacting a high-level examiner like her completely out of the question. A sudden, sharp pang of loneliness strikes him at the thought of never seeing her again, a feeling that lingers as he turns his back on the guild hall. The newly formed team ventures into the heart of the city to kick off their well-earned celebration, soon finding themselves at a lively tavern, the perfect setting for their first official party. The air inside is thick with the boisterous energy of fellow adventurers, but they manage to snag a table and waste no time getting the festivities underway. With frothy mugs of ale raised high, they prepare for the toast that will immortalize not just their victory, but their new beginning. A resounding cheer echoes as their mugs clash, a celebration not only of their success in the grueling exam, but of the unexpected bond that has now made them a family. A genuine smile graces Desmond's lips as he watches his companions, a profound sense of belonging finally washing over him. Across the table, Ren catches his eye, offering a playful, mischievous grin in return, clearly savoring the vibrant atmosphere and the newfound camaraderie. Even Garan and Dorsey, typically the more stoic members of the group, find themselves swept away by the infectious joy of the moment. But their celebration is abruptly interrupted when a hooded figure slides into their booth with a cheeky grin, already holding a mug of their own. The sudden arrival of this mysterious stranger brings their festivities to a halt, leaving both Desmond and Ren utterly baffled. Trying to be polite, the team attempts to explain to the uninvited guest that they are in the middle of a private celebration. But Desmond freezes, a cold sweat breaking out across his brow as he recognizes the all-too-familiar face beneath the shadow of the hood. He can't believe his eyes. It's her. The mysterious figure is none other than their examiner, Cynthia. The shocking revelation leaves Dorothy and Ren completely speechless, struggling to process the sheer impossibility of the situation. Cynthia weakly tries to deny her identity, but it's too late. The entire team recognizes her, and a wave of chaos erupts at their table. A mortified Dorothy turns to Desmond, whispering frantically about how he could possibly be so casual with someone of such high standing. The examiner shoots them a sharp, warning glance, clearly flustered by the unwanted attention they are now attracting. With a sigh of resignation, she apologizes for her impulsive decision to crash their party, confessing she has known Desmond since they were children and simply wanted to congratulate him personally. Hearing this, a faint blush creeps onto the young man's cheeks, clearly touched by his childhood friend's thoughtful gesture. Dorothy, however, begins to panic at the revelation of their connection, hastily trying to assure everyone there was no misunderstanding or foul play. Cynthia quickly clarifies that Desmond earned his place entirely on his own merit, assuring them their friendship played no part in his success. Dorothy, though still taken aback, joyfully nods in rapid agreement, affirming that they never doubted their leader's abilities for a second. At that moment, Ren wraps her arms around Desmond from behind in a warm hug, declaring they were They were the only ones who truly understood his incredible power. Ren's casual closeness and affectionate nickname ignited a storm of jealousy within a completely flustered Cynthia. Sensing the escalating tension, Dorothy attempted to intervene, gently asking the examiner to relax and dispense with the formalities. But Dorothy's calming words were utterly lost on Cynthia, whose hand merely tightened its possessive grip on Desmond's sleeve. Unable to mask her agitation, the examiner leaned in toward Desmond, her smile strained as she questioned him about Ren, her voice tight. "Does she truly know you?" Ren immediately defended their connection, arguing that facing death together had forged a bond between them that no one else could possibly comprehend. In that instant, a fierce rivalry exploded between Cynthia and Ren, both clashing for the attention of a visibly overwhelmed Desmond. Throughout this, Garan remained blissfully oblivious to the drama. His entire world focused on the singular mission of bringing more food to the party. Garan, clutching his silverware in delight, beamed as more platters arrived, completely insulated from the palpable tension filling the air. Outside the tavern, the night was calm and silent, a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere inside that had been utterly shattered, the celebration grinding to a halt as the conflict between the two women intensified. Back inside, Ren seized the initiative, offering Desmond a flirtatious bite from her own plate, a clear gambit to win his affection. Not to be outdone, Cynthia immediately countered, presenting Desmond with a spoonful from her dish while lavishing praise upon its flavor. Trapped between their competing affections, Desmond could only manage a nervous smile, sweat beading on his forehead from the sheer pressure. The young man was frozen solid as Ren and Cynthia vied to be the first to feed him, their argument escalating into a debate over which food was better for him. Compounding Desmond's stress with every word, Dorothy intervened again, pointing out to the two rivals that their aggressive behavior was overwhelming their leader. However, her proposed solution was to suggest milk for his fatigue, an idea so absurdly unhelpful it did nothing to defuse the situation. Garan momentarily broke the tension by loudly praising the pasta, to which Desmond could only respond with a hollow, forced compliment. The young man politely tried to decline their offers, explaining with that same pained smile that he was perfectly capable of feeding himself. But Ren and Cynthia simply cornered him, moving closer and demanding that he finally make a decision and choose between the two of them. The rivalry hit a fever pitch, with Cynthia passionately arguing the history of their childhood friendship against Ren's claim of their unbreakable bond as teammates. An innocent question from Desmond, asking if he was simply meant to choose the food, was spectacularly misinterpreted by a suddenly blushing Ren. The young woman appeared entirely receptive to his perceived boldness, forcing a mortified Desmond to hastily clarify they were only talking about the meal. The misunderstanding proved contagious, spreading to Cynthia, who now flushed a deep crimson at her friend's imagined audacity. The examiner blushed violently, a secret part of her wishing she were the object of such unexpected boldness. Fed up with the indecision, Cynthia slammed her gauntleted fist on the table with a deafening crash, declaring that this stalemate could not continue. The two women resolved to settle their dispute once and for all, while all Desmond wanted was to be allowed to eat in peace. In their minds, both women had already won, each utterly convinced that her dish was the superior choice for Desmond. Meanwhile, Garan continued his personal feast, constructing a formidable mountain of empty plates beside him. Ren, with boundless energy, ordered even more food, absolutely determined not to fail in her mission to personally feed her leader. Suddenly, Garan's tower of plates began to wobble dangerously, threatening to topple over and crash onto the table. Desmond shouted a warning, his eyes wide at the impending disaster, causing Ren and Cynthia to instantly look at him, expecting him to intervene and save them from the impending chaos. A cascade of food erupts from the falling plates, shattering Cynthia's stoic composure in a splatter of gravy and humiliation. Ren is caught in the culinary crossfire, her face a perfect mask of disbelief as she's decorated with the evening's meal. But in a twist that stunned them both, Desmond didn't move to shield them. Instead, he lunged, his sole focus on saving Garan from the impact. The young leader attempts a feeble explanation, a nervous smile plastered on his face as he faces the twin death glares of his spurned admirers. Desmond's justification for saving Garan, however logical, only fans the flames of fury in the two women, now defeated and dripping with sauce. Their gazes lock onto Garan, identifying him as the source of their shared misery. In that moment, the rivalry transforms as Ren approaches Cynthia with a new, unspoken proposal. Casting their differences aside, the two women decide to wash away their troubles with drink, forging an unexpected and powerful alliance. What began as a simple congratulatory dinner for Desmond spirals into a night of unbridled chaos and revelry. Ren, utterly lost to the drink, radiates pure, unadulterated joy, her face flushed and her laughter echoing through the hall. As the wild night wanes down, a sober Garan is left to carry the unconscious Ren, while Dorothy struggles to impose a semblance of order. Meanwhile, Desmond escorts Cynthia, graciously thanking her for joining their chaotic celebration. Dorothy finds herself reflecting on the evening, realizing it's the first time she's ever truly celebrated with her teammates. Desmond, a rare, genuine smile on his face, confesses he's happy and grateful that Cynthia was there. A faint blush colors Cynthia's cheeks as she admits she's glad she came to the celebration too. The young woman confidently adds that she's happy to be in the same clan as him, but Desmond chuckles, gently reminding her that their respective brigades are stationed worlds apart. With unwavering confidence, Cynthia assures a slightly flustered Desmond that his journey to the 1st Brigade will be a short one. He mistakes her faith for simple kindness, but the serious, unwavering look she gives him confirms her words are anything but hollow. A warm smile touches the examiner's lips as she admits that, despite the madness, she's truly glad they are her teammates. The scene then cuts to a blissfully drunk Ren clinging to Garan for dear life, a perfect, chaotic example of these new team dynamics. Desmond, with a strained smile, promises to rein in Ren's behavior around her superior. Cynthia concedes that while the party with everyone was fun, she had something else in mind. Her gaze intensifies as she reveals her true desire to celebrate with him, and him alone. Desmond is left utterly speechless by her bold proposition, but Cynthia, seeing his shock, immediately retreats, trying to pretend the words were never spoken. Yet, under the soft glow of the moon, she offers him a radiant smile and says, "Starting tomorrow, I'll be counting on you." The moment the words leave her lips, a wave of embarrassment crashes over her, a deep blush painting her cheeks as she can barely whisper Desmond's name. The young man, blushing just as fiercely, feels a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed, yet undeniably flattered by his friend's heartfelt confession. Finding his voice, Desmond mirrors her sentiment, agreeing that he's counting on her, too, as the quiet intimacy of the night envelops them. Morning breaks over the city, heralding not just a new day, but a new chapter. Their first destination is an alchemy shop, a crucial step in their preparations. The shop's interior is a kaleidoscope of bubbling liquids and shimmering vials, a dizzying array of potions that leaves the team in awe. Dorothy takes charge, methodically listing the essential supplies they'll need, from potent healing elixirs to powerful antidotes. A current of excitement runs through them as they gather their gear, each one determined to be perfectly prepared for their first official mission as a unified team. But Desmond, ever the pragmatist, cuts through the excitement with a logistical detail, innocently asking if they should be splitting the cost of the supplies between them. A warm smile on her face, Dorothy reveals the clan will shoulder the entire expense, a statement that leaves Desmond utterly astonished. A bitter memory surfaces of his struggles in Espatada, where every single coin for his supplies came from his own dwindling funds. This unexpected generosity ignites a fire within him, but it also brings the crushing weight of the clan's expectations down on his shoulders. Their shopping expedition a resounding success, the team emerges from the shop, their bags brimming with potions and their spirits high for the battle ahead. Once they step out onto the bustling street, Desmond's thoughts drift to his former companion, Adele, a wave of curiosity washing over him as he wonders where his path has led. Their mission draws them to the northern district of Bristol, where the gaping maw of an ominous dungeon awaits. This is the infamous C-rank dungeon, known as Green Bites, a colossal pit that plunges into the very depths of the earth. Deep within its treacherous confines, a desperate battle unfolds, where an exhausted Adele fights for his very survival. His female companion can only watch, her face a mask of disbelief and growing concern, while his other party member, the team's formidable tank, is drenched in sweat, the immense pressure clearly taking its toll as he fails to hold the line against a swarming horde of goblins. These creatures are far more ferocious than any they had anticipated. Adele, his body slick with sweat and marred by countless scratches, silently curses his own powerlessness in the face of this onslaught. A storm of confusion rages within him. How could his supposedly veteran party be crumbling so easily? Frustration boils over as he watches them fail against what should be mere goblins. In a flash of green fury, one of the creatures lunges forward, its claws aim for a fatal strike. In a last desperate act, Adele throws his sword up, just barely managing to parry the blow. But the sheer force of the impact is too much. It shatters his defense and sends him hurtling violently through the air. His companions scream his name, their faces etched with horror as they witness their leader's fall. The red-headed Mage, now isolated, finds herself cornered by the snarling beasts. Frozen in a state of pure terror, her voice shrill with panic, she shrieks at the tank to protect her, desperately reminding him of his role as their shield. The fragile unity of the party shatters into chaos as accusations fly, each blaming the other for their disastrous lack of coordination. Amid the shouting, the Mage confesses her magic has failed her, a revelation Adele hears from the cold dungeon floor, his expression a mask of pure helpless frustration. Internally, Adele damns his predicament and the utter incompetence of his team. Mustering what little authority he has left, he takes command, bellowing an order for an immediate retreat via a teleportation scroll. In a flash of light, they are safe, sprawled on the ground just outside the dungeon's entrance. Every ounce of their energy drained by the narrow escape. A cold fury consumes Adele. He cannot fathom how a party of their renown could be decimated by the lowest tier of monsters. The tank, grasping for an excuse, suggests they must have entered the wrong dungeon, but the healer swiftly cuts him down with cold, undeniable logic. The young woman offers a weak excuse, proposing that perhaps they were all just having an off day. Yet the knowing glint in her eye betrays a deeper suspicion. With a sharp tone, the healer directly confronts her companions, openly questioning if the widespread rumors of their power were nothing more than a wild exaggeration. At this, Adele's composure finally shatters. He erupts in a torrent of rage, pointing a trembling finger at the healer and blaming the failure of her support magic for their humiliating defeat. The healer's face contorts with a mix of disbelief and fury at her leader's baseless accusation. She refuses to be a scapegoat, immediately firing back, deflecting the blame and exposing the utter uselessness of the entire team. Her sharp words first target the tank, reminding everyone how he couldn't even hold back a simple wave of enemies. laying his weakness bare for all to see. Unrelenting, she continues her scathing critique, pointing out how the mage casts little more than basic spells before being completely neutralized. Then, with a voice dripping in disdain, she turns to Adele, reminding him that he was taken down by a single, solitary goblin. Her mockery is now open and venomous as she declares how truly pathetic it is that the renowned party of heroes is, in reality, so utterly weak. The healer's sharp words slice through Adele's pride, and a raw, uncontrollable rage causes him to grit his teeth as he completely loses his composure. He lunges forward, his hand wrapping around her throat as he furiously declares her fired from the party. The healer chokes, struggling against his iron grip, her pleas to stop muffled and desperate. But Adele, lost in a sea of red-hot anger, ignores her cries, refusing to release his hold. Then, with a blur of motion, she swings her staff, the impact sending him hurtling through the air. The party leader slams into the ground with a sickening thud, a cloud of dust and rock exploding around him. Stunned and utterly humiliated, Adele slowly raises his head, his mind reeling, unable to process how he was defeated so effortlessly. His two teammates can only watch, frozen in disbelief at the sudden turn of events. The healer gazes down at him, a playful, taunting smile on her lips as she feigns ignorance of his fury. Her voice drips with mockery as she chides him for failing to even adopt a defensive posture. Her expression shifts to one of pure superiority as she delivers his sentence with a single, crushing word: weak. That final devastating insult shatters what little control Adele had left. His anger erupts, and a furious light blazes in his eyes. She informs him he needn't bother firing her because she is quitting first, her voice laced with utter disdain. She proclaims her refusal to work with such an incompetent party and warns them never to seek her out again. With that, she turns and walks away, a picture of cold indifference, leaving a deeply shamed Adele and his shell-shocked teammates in her wake. Adele can only grind his teeth in silent fury, cursing the situation, cursing his own powerlessness. His frustration boils over, and he slams his fist into the ground as his mind becomes consumed with thoughts of enchanters. Fueled by his overflowing rage, he reaches a bitter, twisted conclusion: all enchanters are nothing but a plague. Meanwhile, the narrative shifts, returning to Desmond as he stands before the imposing facade of the Night Clan headquarters. A spark of pure excitement dances in the young man's eyes at the prospect of his very first official mission, filling him with a quiet, unshakable determination. He vows to himself that this inaugural assignment for the clan will be nothing short of a resounding success. His dreams set on ascending the clan's hierarchy, hoping to one day earn a place in the legendary 1st Brigade. Much like Cynthia before him, Desmond now meets his new comrades, the 5th Brigade, all of them poised and ready for their first mission together. The young man can't help but wonder what their task will entail. While the sharp-witted elf mage speculates it will likely be a simple dungeon exploration, the blonde swordswoman, brimming with confidence, boldly suggests they wrap up the mission in record time, earning a quick warning from the mage not to get overconfident. A warm smile spreads across Desmond's face, feeling a genuine sense of joy and excitement to be working with such a spirited team. With anticipation hanging in the air, the group moves to enter the briefing room for their assignment. But just then, the scene cuts away abruptly, revealing two men whose expressions are grim and fraught with tension. In another corner of the headquarters, a different group of adventurers is locked in a heated argument, their faces masks of anger and frustration. Returning to the main hall, a large crowd of clan members has now gathered, throwing the entire space into an atmosphere of chaos and rising disorder. Desmond and his new teammates stand frozen, completely baffled by the sudden commotion that has engulfed the headquarters. Lo, angry murmurs ripple through the other adventurers, and Desmond's team quickly realizes that something is deeply wrong within the clan. The swordswoman, ever confident, flashes a grin, assuming the whispers are in admiration of her impressive kill record. However, the truth is far different. A nearby adventurer leans in and clarifies the grim reality. The stares and whispers are directed at Desmond, accusing him of using connections to join the clan. This startling revelation leaves Desmond and his entire team utterly bewildered. Across the hall, a group of clan members glares at them, their eyes filled with open contempt. Whispers of favoritism began to poison the air, fueled by resentment toward the new team's perceived arrogance. The rumors zeroed in on Desmond, labeling him as nothing more than Cynthia's childhood friend. The venomous gossip didn't stop there. It soon ensnared the elven mage, with whispers suggesting she too had a powerful benefactor pulling strings from within the clan. What began as envy quickly festered into open rage. Fellow adventurers, their faces twisted with contempt, began to openly accuse them of cheating. A furious mob closed in, surrounding Desmond's team with palpable hostility. Vicious shouts echoed through the hall, demanding their expulsion and branding them as pathetic frauds. Amidst the chaos, Desmond stepped forward, raising his hands in a desperate attempt to quell the rising storm. He denied every accusation, his voice strained as he pleaded that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Just as the tension reached its breaking point, a commanding voice boomed from a balcony high above, silencing the entire hall with a single command: "Enough!" Every head in the seething crowd snapped upward, their expressions a mixture of startled surprise and lingering annoyance at the interruption. A wave of silence washed over the clan members, their fury quelled by the unexpected intervention. Desmond and his companions remained coiled with tension, their eyes fixed on the source of the command. They watched as a shadowy figure emerged into the light, a disheveled man who leaned precariously over the railing. He addressed the stunned crowd below, his slurred voice announcing the arrival of the 5th Brigade. A jolt of disbelief shot through the team as they recognized the man. It was Brant, their newly assigned captain. Desmond's mind reeled, struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. He refused to accept that this staggering, incoherent man was supposed to be their leader. The horrifying truth then settled upon them. Their captain was utterly intoxicated in front of the entire clan. The vice captain scrambled to his side, desperately trying to restrain Brant as he swayed dangerously over the balcony's edge, a fall away from disaster. Yet, despite his inebriated state, the captain managed a moment of fleeting lucidity, steadying himself just long enough to announce the day's mission. Their very first assignment, he declared, would be an expedition into the treacherous, frozen depths of the Ebro ice cave. Brant then revealed their primary objective: to retrieve the Gem of Wisdom, a legendary and rare artifact hidden deep within the cave's heart. A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. They all knew the gem was a B-rank artifact, a prize far beyond the reach of new recruits. One adventurer finally broke the silence, his voice ringing with protest. He reminded everyone that the ice cave was a high-difficulty dungeon, a place where even seasoned veterans tread with caution. Another clan member, his face flushed with fury, stepped forward. He bellowed for an explanation, his voice cracking with rage, while Desmond observed the unfolding chaos with a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. He began to analyze the impossible situation. The conclusion was chillingly simple: sending the 5th Brigade, a team composed entirely of D-rank adventurers, into a B-rank dungeon was nothing short of a death sentence. Sheer panic seized the new recruits as they envisioned their own brutal ends, torn apart by the first monster or trap they would inevitably encounter. Even with his powerful multiplication magic, Desmond knew their chances were slim to none. He cast a nervous glance toward his captain, only to find Brant watching them with a strange, enigmatic smile. He told them that this was simply the clan's policy, a trial by fire where they would learn the true meaning of being a chevalier. His cryptic pronouncement left Desmond and the others utterly baffled, struggling to grasp the hidden meaning behind his words. The towering, imposing silhouette of the clan headquarters loomed over them, a stark reminder of the massive, unfeeling organization they were now a part of. It made the captain's chilling words resonate with a terrible new weight. A horrifying realization dawned on Desmond and the others to the clan. They were nothing more than disposable pawns. From his perch on this balcony, Captain Brant watched their dawning horror with complete and utter indifference. He lazily told them to stop making such a fuss, his lips twisting into a malicious grin as he prepared to twist the knife even further. With chilling nonchalance, Brant confirmed their deepest fears, admitting that they were, in fact, nothing more than replacements. The shameless confession ignited a firestorm of fury from the crowd, who erupted in disbelief, but Desmond stood frozen, paralyzed by the sheer shock of the revelation. He struggled to process the cold, cruel reality of an organization so vast it could treat lives as meaningless. The young man couldn't accept that the esteemed Cynthia clan, a clan he had dreamed of serving for his entire life, was rotten to its very core. The air crackled with tension as the humiliated adventurers prepared to confront the captain who had just condemned them. As a storm of anger brewed around him, Desmond could only pray the situation wouldn't spiral into chaos. Brant then unveiled his cruel strategy, revealing they had assembled 6 teams from the 5th Brigade for what amounted to a suicide mission. The plan was laid bare with chilling simplicity, used the overwhelming numbers of the 5th Brigade as nothing more than cannon fodder. The captain's voice dripped with contempt as he ordered them to blindly follow the lead team, treating them as expendable pawns. The humiliation was a physical weight in the room, and the adventurers struggled to choke back the rage at their blatant mistreatment. Just as the dreadful thought crossed Desmond's mind that he wouldn't want to be the leader in this nightmare, a chilling announcement came. The captain declared that team number 55 would take command, and with those words, every eye in the hall fell upon Desmond's group. In an instant, they were drowning in a sea of hostile glares, each one filled with a toxic mix of resentment and bitter envy. The decision cemented suspicions of favoritism, and the crowd's silent judgment was a crushing blow. From the balcony, Captain Brandt remained oblivious to the simmering tension. He offered them a casual greeting, raising his drink as if toasting their demise, and then a sound cut through the silence. All attention snapped to a pair of imposing double doors, groaning as they began to open. Desmond, now the reluctant leader of a death squad, felt a cold dread. He plastered a weak smile on his face, a fragile mask hiding the sheer panic that was seizing him and his terrified teammates. The world then shifted, leaving the suffocating clan headquarters behind. They found themselves at the gaping mouth of the Mezbel ice cave, a place whose fearsome reputation preceded it. A final review of the mission details confirmed their worst fears. They were about to enter a B-rank dungeon, a challenge of lethal difficulty. The moment they stepped inside, the temperature plummeted, the cave's icy breath stealing the warmth from their lungs and freezing the very ground beneath their feet. For a breathtaking moment, Desmond and the elven mage were captivated by the crystalline beauty of the dungeon stretching out before them. They soon realized this was no natural cavern, but an ancient, artificial structure, carved by a long-forgotten civilization. A sly grin touched the swordswoman's lips as she cut through the awe, her voice a sharp reminder to stay vigilant for whatever horrors lurked in the shadows. The young woman then noticed something strange. She could see the mist of her own breath, yet felt none of the biting cold. With a flicker of pride, Desmond revealed his foresight, explaining that he had already cast a powerful cold resistance spell on the entire party. A wave of relief and astonishment washed over his companions. The spell would not only shield them from the cold, but also ensure their movements remained swift and unhindered. He explained confidently that while temporary, his magic would last them through the entire treacherous exploration. The swordswoman, visibly impressed, placed a hand on Desmond's arm, her touch conveying her admiration for his incredible magical talent as she leaned in close. "I want you as my personal heater," she joked, clinging to him. "I absolutely despise the cold." Desmond, flustered by the proximity, quickly reminded her that this was no time for games. A single lapse in concentration could mean a frozen grave for them all. In that very instant, a hostile figure in spiked boots stormed towards them, his face a mask of fury. Without a single word, he drove his foot hard into Desmond's back. Desmond crashed face first onto the slick ice, the impact echoing through the cavern as his companion cried out his name in sheer terror. The swordswoman spun around, her eyes blazing with fury, demanding to know what madness had provoked such a cowardly attack. The adventurer, seething with frustration, spat that they were wasting precious time with idle chatter instead of focusing on the mission that could get them all killed. His voice dripped with scorn for teams he believed had only gotten this far by pulling strings and relying on connections. The swordswoman's rage intensified. Desmond flatly denies the accusations, but his words are lost on the relentless man. He staggers to his feet, the dusty imprint of a boot seared onto his back. As his accuser roars that he bought his leadership position with connections, the venomous charge spreads through the crowd like wildfire, their voices rising in a unified chant, refusing to trust their lives to a team of frauds. Desmond, his voice trembling, desperately tries to quell the rising tide of mutiny. Beside him, his companion's patience wears thin, her expression hardening with annoyance. Finally, having seen enough, the swordswoman steps forward. Her voice rings out, sharp and clear, boldly declaring that she will demonstrate their true power, leaving a stunned Desmond in her wake. She issues an open challenge to anyone brave enough to test her, to witness their skills firsthand. The lead aggressor meets her gaze, his eyes burning with a furious intensity. It is a challenge tacitly accepted. The man cracks his knuckles, preparing for the clash as his own companions roar their encouragement, while a terrified Desmond can only watch in horror. The mob parts like the sea, forming a crude arena, their chants now demanding his team be cast out. Desmond makes one last attempt to reason with them, his voice cracking as he pleads for cooperation, reminding them that they are all allies in this place. But the crowd, consumed by rage, drowns out his words with screams of pure hatred, a defiant smirk playing on her lips. The swordswoman finally lunges forward, resolved to end this confrontation on her own terms. But in that instant, a cold dread seizes Desmond as he feels his enchantment warp into something terribly wrong. The situation spirals completely out of control, the aggressors now openly mocking the team's supposed lack of loyalty. They close in, and without a word of warning, A fist connects squarely with Desmond's jaw, the blow punctuated by the sneered accusation of using his connections, his face already bruising. The young leader denies everything, insisting on their innocence. His pleas, however, fall on deaf ears. He's met with a brutal kick to the gut as the mob jeers that every guilty man claims to be innocent. In a flash, several adventurers are on him, pinning him to the cold stone floor to continue their assault. That's when the swordswoman finally intervenes. She moves like lightning, her blade furiously blocking a downward blow meant for her leader. With fury unleashed, she roars at the aggressor that he has just made a grave mistake. Without a moment's hesitation, she pivots and delivers a devastating kick aimed straight for his head. Yet the man barely even flinches, taking the full force of the blow with a superhuman resilience that leaves her utterly stunned. To her disbelief, the powerful strike inflicts no visible damage. The swordswoman's eyes widen as she realizes her opponent is built like a fortress of stone. Impressed by his sheer durability, a grin spreads across her face as she praises him, openly acknowledging that he is far from an ordinary foe. This display, however, only enrages the crowd further, now utterly convinced that Desmond's team is weak and has only advanced through favoritism. Suddenly, the very ground beneath them crackles and freezes over, trapping one adventurer's foot in a sheath of magical ice. Seizing the opportunity in the ensuing chaos, several men swarm the swordswoman, forcefully grabbing her arms and restraining her. In the same moment, the elf mage is cornered and swiftly captured by another group of adventurers. Amidst the escalating pandemonium, a single firm footstep echoes across the newly formed ice, heralding the arrival of someone poised to shatter the course of this conflict. A sickening realization dawns on Desmond. The enchantment he casts is spiraling into a catastrophe. The other adventurers feel it too. A palpable sense of imminent danger that stops them dead in their tracks. Alarmed, he presses his hand to the frozen ground, understanding with dawning horror that his own magic has dangerously intertwined with the very essence of the dungeon. Yet, despite the unnerving shift in the atmosphere, the lead aggressor remains undeterred, preparing to press his attack against Desmond. The young woman with glasses screams out a desperate warning, trying to make them see the far greater threat that now looms over every single one of them. But amidst the chaos, her pleas are ignored. The mob remains focused on its prey, keeping Desmond's team pinned down. With chilling arrogance, they demand the party surrender as the price for their lives. But the elven mage, even as she struggles, feels a sinister tremor from the cave floor. Her eyes widen as she senses an unnatural energy gathering beneath the ice. A wave of horror washes over her as she realizes the frozen ground is a colossal, pressure-sensitive trap, and their battle has just armed it. The swordswoman and her allies come to the same terrifying conclusion. The aggressors, however, remain oblivious, scoffing at the frantic warnings they cannot comprehend. Suddenly, a spiderweb of cracks erupts beneath their feet, a prelude to the catastrophe as the entire floor gives way. In an instant, every adventurer from Airfield is sent plunging into the gaping, frozen abyss below. Sheer panic contorts their faces as they fall helplessly into the darkness, while the swordswoman and her companion scramble desperately on a collapsing ledge of ice. Their fight for purchase is futile. The elf mage and those clinging to her are torn away by the crumbling rock. Dragged into the chasm, Desmond and his comrades let out cries of pure disbelief, their minds refusing to accept the sudden grim reality. It is a symphony of chaos, a whirlwind of bodies and screams swallowed by a void where the ground had been only moments before. Through Desmond's falling eyes, the bottom of the pit is revealed a forest of razor-sharp ice stakes pointing towards the heavens. It is a death trap of nightmarish design. Faces etched with terror, they can only watch as their final, fatal destination rushes up to meet them. The lethal ice spikes gleam with a malevolent light, promising a gruesome end to all who have been cast down. The few who clung to the edges can only watch in horror as their comrades are lost to the fall. The devastating scene unfolding into a near-total massacre. The survivors stare into the abyss, their minds reeling from the shock of witnessing such complete and instantaneous annihilation. Desmond's party, having barely escaped the collapse, watches the tragedy unfold in stunned silence, bracing for the inevitable impact. Then, a pulse of verdant green light erupts, miraculously arresting the fall of every single person. Everyone, both in the pit and on the ledges, is frozen in utter astonishment. Desmond and the man who had been his primary assailant both peer down, their conflict forgotten in the face of this impossible intervention. Even the sharp-witted elf mage and the stoic dwarf are left utterly baffled by the phenomenon. Enveloped in a protective, glowing aura, the falling adventurers slowly realize the impossible. They have been saved from certain doom. One man stares at his hands, then at the ground, where the ice spikes have shattered into dust upon contact with his magically shielded body. A wave of euphoric cheers erupts from the base of the chasm as the fallen realize they are completely unharmed, standing safely in the heart of the death trap. Desmond's attacker, while relieved to be alive, finds his confusion quickly hardening into suspicion. His gaze darts around, searching for the source of this miracle, until his eyes lock onto a figure in the distance. There, collapsed on the ice, is Desmond, his staff pulsing with the same brilliant green light. The young mage clearly wounded and utterly spent. He is the undeniable source of the power that saved them all. The attacker and his partner are rendered completely speechless. They cannot process the reality that the very boy they were trying to eliminate had just become their savior. One by one, the other adventurers look up. The unbelievable truth slowly dawns on them as, with a final surge of will, Desmond pushes himself up, leaning heavily on his staff. The immense strain is etched onto his face, proof that he had cast a powerful body fortification spell on every single falling person in the nick of time. But his voice, though weak, cuts through their relief with a stark warning the magic is fading, and they must escape before the cavern awakens its next horror. Stepping into command, he issues a sharp order for everyone to use the ropes and ascend from the chasm immediately. The adventurers, still reeling at the bottom of the pit, begin to claw their way to safety. Once the last person is on the ledge, the man confirms that every soul has escaped the deadly trap. The crunch of a boot on solid ice marks the end of the harrowing climb for the final survivor. His companions rush to Desmond's side just in time to see him collapse, his body utterly drained from mana exhaustion. A horrifying realization dawns upon the attacker and his partner. All this time, while they were relentlessly striking him, Desmond had been casting the very spell that saved them. A flashback confirms their fears, revealing the young mage was the first to sense the death trap. They understand now. Despite the barrage of blows, his only goal was to save them all. The attacker gazes at Desmond through new eyes, finally comprehending that his sole intention had always been their protection. The other adventurers watch the scene unfold, slowly processing the sheer magnitude of their terrible, near-fatal mistake. Guilt and regret are etched onto the faces of those who had raised their hands against him. The leader of the aggressors looks at Desmond, his expression a storm of shame and newfound determination. He vividly remembers the young man's words, calling them comrades even as they attacked him. With an unwavering expression, the man makes a silent vow to amend his grievous error, stepping forward as a gesture of peace. He offers Desmond a collection of potions to restore his strength. Meanwhile, the swordswoman turns to her own team, apologizing for the senseless waste of their resources. She carries the heavy burden of her error, blaming herself for not heeding Desmond's warnings from the very beginning. Desmond simply meets her gaze with understanding, holding no grudge for what transpired. Suddenly, the entire group of adventurers surges toward them. They press forward, offering items as a tangible form of apology. Desmond is stunned by the overwhelming amount of recovery items being pushed into his hands. The leader of the aggressors offers a formal, heartfelt apology, admitting that he allowed the chaos of the situation to overwhelm his judgment. With an expression now filled with profound respect, he asks Desmond to lead them on their mission, not as a scapegoat, but as a comrade. Desmond's own team watches the astonishing change in attitude, left speechless as he calmly accepts the alliance. Even the other attackers chime in with their apologies, their sudden familiarity making the young mage slightly uncomfortable. In the distance, the adventurers celebrate the fragile camaraderie born from disaster, unaware that a mysterious female figure watches them from the shadows with a predatory smile. The woman recognizes the group, and seeing the raw potential simmering within them, she decides she will recruit one for her own purposes. However, their path forward reveals a new, gargantuan frozen abyss, an obstacle far more imposing than the chasm they just escaped. The adventurers, though now united, feel a wave of doubt wash over them, questioning if they truly possess the strength to conquer a B-rank dungeon. Desmond falls into deep thought, recognizing the true, hidden danger of this place, while the former aggressor proposes a much simpler plan. His strategy is one of pure survival, avoid all enemies and traps, but Desmond counters with a far more audacious masterstroke: they must destroy the dungeon's core. He explains that by shattering the core, the entire dungeon will weaken, leaving only the most feeble monsters to stand in their way. The leader of the aggressors voices his concern, wondering if they must now search the entire frozen wasteland for this core. Desmond immediately dismisses the idea. He calls such a plan inefficient, warning that it would only devolve into a desperate race. Then, He drops a bombshell. They are not the only party exploring this dungeon. The revelation complicates everything. The man's face pales as he realizes other groups could steal the treasure or destroy the core long before they ever reach it. With a determined glint in his eye, Desmond looks at the anxious faces around him and proposes a bold, dangerous solution. They will split into groups. He lays out the strategy, declaring his team will strike directly at the core while the others secure treasure and watch their flanks. Their objective is singular and absolute: to seize the gem of wisdom as swiftly as possible. Desmond radiates confidence, assuring them that with his multiplication enchantment, his small squad will be more than enough for the task. He theorizes that the massive number of adventurers was a deliberate ploy by the clan leader, designed to split their forces. However, the other adventurers voice a grim reality, confessing they believe themselves to be nothing more than expendable pawns. Desmond refuses to believe that Cynthia's clan, the Knight's Garden, could be so callously ruthless with its own members. Yet despite the doubts, a wave of renewed vigor sweeps through the adventurers, their spirits ignited and ready to pour everything into the mission, while Desmond maintains a grim facade. He silently processes the crushing weight of their predicament, his partner's quiet encouragement a steadying presence at his back. Even those who were once their adversaries now roar with unyielding determination, fully committed to the new path forward. Suddenly, a single magical snowflake crystallizes into existence on the ceiling of the glacial hallway, capturing every eye. The ethereal symbol seems to beckon them forward, leading them down the frozen corridor toward a foreboding door shrouded in mystery at the end of the path. With the way revealed, Desmond embraces his role as leader, steeling himself to guide his newfound allies through the treacherous dungeon. He warns his partner of a particularly perilous path, suggesting a safer route while reminding everyone to stay vigilant for lurking traps and hidden foes. Garan, the steadfast dwarf of the group, breaks the tense silence, approaching a pensive and thoughtful Desmond. The dwarf voices his profound relief that their past conflicts have finally been laid to rest, and a genuine smile at last touches Desmond's lips. He wholeheartedly agrees, a quiet happiness blooming within him at the strength of this unexpected alliance. Recalling the bitter days when they were ostracized and falsely accused, he now sees that these new comrades possess a depth of character he never anticipated, their kindness a stark contrast to his earlier assumptions. Surrounded by these allies, Desmond has a revelation. True strength isn't found in solitary power, but in the unbreakable bonds of camaraderie. His mind paints a horrifying picture of the fate awaiting them should they fail, a vision of absolute annihilation if the core isn't destroyed. He sees it with chilling clarity. Every last group would be systematically wiped out, one by one, taking full responsibility. With a heavy heart, he apologizes for the perilous path he's chosen, asking his comrades to place their faith in him as a profound determination hardens his expression. Confessing his deepest desire is to see them all survive. Moved by his raw honesty, the swordswoman shatters the heavy tension with a bright as you die cheerful laugh. With a playful gesture, she offers her unwavering support, gently teasing his earnest shyness and solidifying the warmth of their team's bond. Their moment is abruptly cut short as a new voice, cool and measured, interrupts the conversation. Surprised, Desmond and his partner pivot to face the speaker, whose words cut straight to the heart of their critical task. The purple-haired woman reveals herself as the leader of another squad, making a stunning proposal that their teams join forces for the mission. Utterly bewildered, Desmond has no memory of this new group, while his former adversary eyes the newcomers with a deep, simmering suspicion. The purple-haired woman introduces herself and her companions as Team Number 24, a flirtatious smile playing on her lips. She reveals her name is Mariel, her voice laced with charm, while one of her companions, a man with a rugged, intimidating presence, grunts his name Gant. The next member, a young man radiating an air of smug superiority, announces his name is Senny, while the last of their group is a timid boy, his eyes hidden behind a curtain of hair. The woman introduces herself as Mariel Jean, and Desmond, baffled by her sudden proposal, asks her to clarify what she truly wants. She answers with chilling resolve, arguing that their survival hinges on their groups merging to face the dungeon's horrors together. With a flicker of admiration in her eyes, she confesses to being captivated by the sheer brilliance of Desmond's enchantment magic. His head was still spinning when Mariel, with breathtaking audacity, closed the distance between them and embraced a stunned, blushing Desmond. Leaning in close, she whispers that he has captured her complete interest before delivering the final blow, a blunt demand that he abandon his friends and join her far superior team. The proposition hangs in the icy air, instantly igniting a firestorm of outrage among his comrades as the swordswoman erupts in pure fury. She accuses Mariel of being a poacher, attempting to steal the very heart of their party, but Mariel simply ignores the outburst, her gaze fixed on Desmond with cold, unwavering ambition. And in that moment, Mariel finally understood why this ragtag team was so reviled. Their true power wasn't in their numbers, but in him. She whispers into Desmond's ear, her words a venomous truth, that his power is the sole reason his so-called weak teammates are still breathing. The swordswoman seethes at the insult, while the rest of the team's anger is eclipsed by their growing concern for Desmond, who is caught in the middle of this manipulative web. A cruel smile plays on Mariel's lips as she suggests that if they genuinely cared for him, they would release him to a team that could truly protect him. Her words strike like daggers, the cruel logic of her argument silencing them, their faces a portrait of shock and wounded pride. The elven mage's knuckles turn white as she clenches her fist, barely restraining the inferno of rage sparked by Mariel's insolent offer. Desmond, finally shaking off his stupor, steps forward to defend his friends, his voice firm as he insists she has gravely misjudged them all. With a look of fierce loyalty, he prepares to defend the honor of his found family. But the swordswoman is already moving, a tempest of righteous anger. "Don't you dare look down on us," she snarls, planting herself between them. "I will never hand Desmond over to the likes of you." Mariel merely scoffs, her voice dripping with condescension, as she declares that while their ranks may be the same, the chasm between their actual power is immeasurable. The sheer arrogance of the insult leaves Desmond and his companion comically bewildered, wondering what nonsense she was spouting, as Gant, Mariel's own teammate, steps in. He quietly explains to a bewildered Desmond that once their leader sets her sights on something, her stubbornness knows no bounds. Breaking the tension, Desmond's teammates begin to tease him about his newfound, dangerous popularity. Even as he remains utterly lost in the escalating chaos, the confrontation devolves as Mariel and the swordswoman abandon all pretense, launching into a bitter exchange of personal insults, their voices echoing in the frozen cavern. Utterly drained by the drama, Desmond mentally checks out, silently lamenting how incredibly complicated friendships could be. His moment of peace is shattered as both women close in on him, cornering him and demanding he choose a side. Right then and there, overwhelmed and desperate, Desmond makes a comical attempt to vanish behind a nearby pillar of ice, offering a strained smile as he tries to de-escalate. "This isn't about choosing," he pleads, but his words are swallowed by a deafening, guttural roar that rips through the air, causing the very ice beneath their feet to fracture. The feud is forgotten in an instant as all three snap their heads upward, their eyes wide with alarm, searching for the source of the terrifying sound. The swordswoman acts on pure instinct, charging toward the noise as a horrified Desmond shouts a warning for her to stop. Without a second's hesitation, her loyal teammates surge forward to follow her, leaving a stunned Desmond alone with Mariel's party. Seizing the perfect opportunity, Mariel's hand darts out, grabbing Desmond's arm to prevent him from following his reckless friends. Her eyes burn with intensity as she leans in, pressing her advantage, her voice a low hiss. "Are you really going to throw your life away for a team that weak?" Desmond could only stare back in silence. Desmond processes her words, his face an unreadable mask of calm. Then, to the utter shock of Mariel and her teammate, he breaks the silence, completely dismantling her logic. A smile of pure conviction spreads across his face as he reveals a startling truth: their so-called weakness is, in fact, their greatest source of strength. Desmond's declaration leaves Mariel utterly speechless, his reasoning a complete and baffling enigma to her. Desmond sees her confusion and understands that the former aggressor is finally grasping the cruel, political nature of the academy. Low-ranked teams were never meant to succeed, they were disposable pawns. In that moment of grim realization, a panicked voice cries out Desmond's name. A new threat is on the horizon. Stepping into the role of leader, Desmond announces that their two teams, united, will handle the destruction of the core. The newly formed alliance ventures down a frost-covered hallway, steeling themselves for the treacherous mission that awaits. As they press forward, a strange distortion ripples through the air, a clear sign that something is terribly wrong. The temperature begins to plummet unnaturally. The cold becomes so intense that it freezes the very potions they carry. Catching everyone completely off guard, panic erupts when one vial freezes solid and shatters into pieces. The sound is a chilling testament to the lethal environment closing in around them. The swordswoman shouts for Desmond to get closer. She points toward an alarming sight materializing in the distance. Through the thick fog, sharp and menacing silhouettes begin to take form. Their worst fears are confirmed. Danger is no longer approaching, it is here. The ice itself begins to writhe and twist, molding itself into a monstrous shape. A colossal torso emerges from the swirling frost, its surface adorned with glimmering crystals of pure ice. The creature reveals its full, terrifying form. It is a towering ice golem, its gaze fixed upon them from a single, malevolent, glowing eye. Desmond's team is frozen in place, paralyzed by pure terror. Marilyn and Gan exchange a horrified glance. This is no common monster, but the final fearsome boss of the dungeon. To compound their dread, an ice wolf appears, growling in bold defiance at the colossus. The golem's eye locks onto its target with a cold, bija, and relentless focus. Utterly ignoring the adventurers, the behemoth gathers its power, radiating an ethereal, icy light. With the speed that defies its immense size, the golem unleashes a single, totally devastating blow, crushing the ice wolf without a shred of mercy. The smaller creature is annihilated in an instant. This overwhelming display of power from the dungeon boss leaves both teams ashen-faced and trembling. Their faces are masks of pure terror, a silent testament to the golem's might. The entire group can only watch the scene unfold. They feel utterly insignificant in the face of such absolute power. Panic begins to set in. But just as they consider retreating, the swordswoman notices a crucial detail. She points past the monstrous guardian, where the dungeon core, their final objective, shimmers in the distance. The realization hits them like a physical blow. To claim victory, they must first defeat the beast that guards their prize, a task that now seems truly impossible. The swordswoman, however, refuses to yield to despair, attempting to rally her companions with a surprising show of confidence. With a defiant smile, she assures them that with Desmond's enchantments, they can bring down the boss with a single, perfectly executed strike. As the crushing weight of their hopes settles upon him, Desmond activates his appraisal skill. His eye ignites with an intense, azure light. His gaze locks onto the ice golem. He scans its every attribute, desperately searching for a weakness he can exploit. The results of the appraisal leave him utterly stunned. The monster's statistics are astronomically high, especially its ridiculously immense vitality. Desmond calmly admits that while his magic indeed multiplies their power, it possesses one crucial, unyielding limitation. The harsh reality of their situation descends upon the group, a truth far colder than the frozen dungeon itself. His companions look to him, their voices trembling. Is your magic strong enough? But Desmond's solemn gaze was all the answer they needed, confirming their worst fears. He laid out the harsh truth: their core attributes were simply too weak, leaving his comrades reeling in a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief. A chilling despair began to creep into their hearts, the bitter taste of failure already on their tongues. But Desmond's spirit remained unbroken, his face hardening as his eyes blazed with unyielding resolve. He voiced a daring new strategy, declaring, "We don't have to destroy it, we just have to withstand it." His plan hinged on his own magic. He would amplify everyone's vitality, transforming them into an unbreakable living shield. This would allow them to endure the beast's onslaught and concentrate all their efforts on shattering its power core. A vision flashed through his mind of the swordswoman, surging with his enchantment, her blade cleaving through the golem's crystalline heart with ease. Gant recalled the spell that had saved them from the perilous fall. It was impressive. He conceded, but he couldn't believe that same magic could endure the golem's devastating power. Desmond attempted to soothe his team's frayed nerves, but the air was thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. He offered a reassuring smile, insisting he had reviewed their abilities. Defense was their greatest strength. And then, in an instant, Desmond's expression shifted, his eyes locking onto an unexpected movement far ahead. It was Ren, the swordswoman, who had broken formation and sprinted forward. She stood there, simmering with impatience, but her patience wore thin, and without a word, Ren launched herself into the fray. "Now, Desmond, your magic," she screamed back at him as panic erupted among the others, their desperate cries for her to fall back lost in the frigid air. Mariel could only watch in horror at the swordswoman's sheer audacity, a cold sweat beading on her brow. While she didn't doubt the strength of Desmond's enchantments, Mariel simply couldn't fathom the kind of blind faith that would drive someone to charge so recklessly. Ignoring the mortal danger, Ren closed the distance to the golem, her blade raised to strike the first blow. The creature's colossal eye twitched, its gaze fixing upon the minuscule warrior who dared to defy it. A wave of pure panic crashed over the party as they saw the golem had found its prey, their voices joining in a single desperate plea for Desmond to unleash the spell. His face a mask of intense focus, Desmond gathered his power to cast the vital enchantment. But in that final, critical moment, his expression faltered, revealing a sudden, terrible flaw in his plan. A wave of confusion struck him as the magic, his magic, refused to answer his call. Then he saw it, the biting cold had encased the tip of his staff in a sheath of solid ice. A strangled gasp escaped his lips as the horrifying truth dawned on him. His staff, the very conduit of his power, was completely inert. In that same horrifying instant, his mind flashed back. His staff must have brushed against an icy wall. Utter despair consumed him as he faced the reality that without his functioning staff, he was powerless to cast the spell. The devastating news hit Mariel and Gant like a physical blow, leaving them stunned and speechless. Meanwhile, the golem's eye began to pulse with a malevolent, brilliant light as it prepared to strike. The glacial behemoth unleashed a storm of razor-sharp icicles directly at the now defenseless Ren. Pure terror contorted the swordswoman's face as she watched her doom hurtle toward her. In a heartbeat, Ren was completely engulfed by the deadly barrage, every path of escape sealed by a wall of ice. Yet, even in the face of certain death, the young warrior clenched her jaw, bracing herself for the final shattering impact. Her comrades could only look on, frozen in horror, certain they were about to witness her end. But in the last possible second, a figure blurred past them, the fighter from the rival party tackling Ren and throwing her clear of the attack. "Get up!" her rescuer yelled at the stunned swordswoman. "It's not over." The golem's crystalline eyes seemed to fracture, radiating pure, unadulterated fury. Its gaze shifted to a burning yellow as it locked onto the two adventurers, and with a roar of frozen rage, the golem unleashed yet another deadly volley of ice, ensnaring the two warriors at the heart of the maelstrom. From a distance, their companions could only watch in horror, their desperate cries for them to escape swallowed by the chaos. Staggering to their feet, they stand shoulder to shoulder, a defiant pair against the hulking beast as it readies another onslaught. The glacial monstrosity begins to draw in energy, causing the crystalline shards on its form to pulse with a malevolent, chilling light. It's then that Ren's eyes widen, realizing her savior hadn't emerged from the rescue unharmed. A wicked sliver of ice is lodged deep within her leg armor, a grim trophy from the beast. With a pained gasp, the warrior acknowledges her critical error, knowing the wound had rendered her a liability. But in a surprising turn, Ren's hand clamps onto her arm, a grip of unyielding support. A fire of resolve now burns in Ren's eyes. She would not leave her behind, ignoring the wounded warrior's pleas to run. Ren hoists her up, determined to keep her standing. She couldn't possibly abandon the very person who had just pulled her from the jaws of death. "If you give up now," Ren warns, her voice tight with urgency, "we both die here." As if in answer to a silent prayer, a colossal wall of ice erupts from the ground, intercepting the lethal volley of frozen spears. Whirling around, both women stare in disbelief at the crystalline barrier that had just shielded them from certain doom. Their eyes fall upon Gant, the dwarf from the rival team, his hands still outstretched from conjuring the massive wall. His expression is grim. As he commands them to fall back, his voice strained. "Get out of here," he growls. "I can't do that again." But the cost of such a powerful spell is steep. The immense effort drains him completely, and he crumples to the frozen floor. To Ren's dismay, her companion's eyes widen in terror as she sees the golem preparing yet another assault. Their one protector was now incapacitated, and they were defenseless once more. A wave of pure terror washes over the students as they brace for the inevitable. But then, a sudden torrent of fire roars to life, intercepting the icy projectiles in a hiss of steam. The frozen daggers melt into nothingness before they can find their mark. Ren and the wounded warrior can only stare, bewildered by the impossible sight of fire magic in this frigid cavern. Ren's head whips around, her gaze landing on Mariel, the elf mage, whose hands are still glowing with residual heat, but the relief is short-lived. "I'm spent," the elf whispers, her body trembling. "I have no mana left." Panic erupts among the other students, their mission now a desperate struggle for survival, compounded by the need to rescue their fallen comrades. A frantic Desmond attempts to rally them, to shout orders, but the overwhelming chaos and his own indecision render him mute. His hand shakes, hovering uselessly over his staff, as a single agonizing question echoes endlessly in the prison of his mind. What do I do? The weight of his failure crashes down upon him, a suffocating guilt that whispers a terrible truth. This was all his fault. He remembers his earlier confidence, the bitter taste of his own arrogance as he boasted that his plan, his enhancement magic, was infallible. A single hot tear traces a path down his cheek as the horrifying realization dawns his mistake was about to cost his friends their very lives. The ghosts of past failures rise to haunt him, the cruel taunts of former allies echoing in his ears, branding him useless, utterly and completely broken. Desmond surrenders to the crushing despair, wholly convinced that he is powerless to change their fate. Lost in a mire of self-pity, he resigns himself to being nothing more than a worthless burden. In the midst of his breakdown, the rest of the students are frozen by fear, trapped between the instinct to fight and the urge to flee. Even Ren, caught on the front lines, offers a small, resigned smile, accepting that this cold, unforgiving cave would be her tomb. But then, a hand violently seizes the front of Desmond's robes, yanking him from the depths of his despair. He looks up into the furious eyes of the warrior from his own team, whose patience with his defeated spiral has finally shattered. "You are useless," the warrior bellows, his face a mask of rage. The words are like a physical blow, and Desmond flinches, stunned by the venom in his teammate's voice. "Is that all you can do?" he snarls. "Apologize and assume everyone thinks you're pathetic. Is that it?" The crushing weight of the truth renders Desmond silent, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Just then, the warrior's sharp accusation cuts through the silence, calling him out for his inaction and even hinting he'd been drinking. Stung by the remark, the warrior instantly fires back, his denial sharp and absolute. He declares the bottle is not for indulgence, but a crucial tool for their mission. And before a bewildered Desmond, he uncorks it and pours the clear liquid over the ice-encased staff. As the warrior works to free the weapon, Desmond can only stare, his mind reeling, completely unable to grasp the bizarre logic behind his companion's actions. A faint smirk plays on the warrior's lips as he unveils his simple yet brilliant plan. The alcohol, with its low freezing point, will eat away at the ice. The warrior's cleverness came from a simply worldly truth about the antifreeze properties of strong spirits. Sonari concedes that the liquor alone is no miracle cure, its effect barely better than warm water. But by channeling his own body heat into the effort, a sudden crackle echoes in the cavern, and the staff breaks free, leaving Desmond utterly astonished. The fog of despair in Desmond's mind vanishes, replaced by a brilliant spark of awe as he beholds his staff, now liberated and gleaming with latent power. But their moment of triumph is short-lived, as the very ice wall shielding them begins to groan under pressure, dangerous fractures spiderwebbing across its surface. With a deafening roar, the barrier shatters, unleashing a fresh volley of razor-sharp icicles upon them. Panic erupts as the adventurers find themselves utterly defenseless against the storm. A wry smile touches Sonari's lips, a look of grim acceptance that their luck, and their ability to dodge, has finally run out. The female warrior cries out for him to save her, but he just quips back with dark humor that he would much rather be the one in need of rescuing. All the while, the monolithic ice golem gathers its power, its form crackling with immense energy as it prepares to deliver the final devastating blow. The creature unleashes an overwhelming torrent of frozen fury, a wave of absolute power that seems to seal their fate. The party can only watch, bracing for the inevitable end. But just as oblivion is about to claim them, a vibrant, emerald aura flares to life, enveloping the entire party in a protective cocoon, leaving them untouched and utterly bewildered. Catherine's eyes widen in sheer disbelief, her gaze fixed on the shimmering green shield that has miraculously snatched them from the jaws of death. Their eyes follow the source of the magic and find Desmond, no longer crumpled in despair, but standing tall, his staff held firmly. With a quiet confidence, he announces his return to the fight. He reveals it was his own physical enhancement magic, amplified into a shield to protect them all. Yet, despite the grandeur of his heroic intervention, the biting cold of the cavern has left a telltale nip of frostbite on his nose. His companions, now safe within his emerald sanctuary, erupt in cheers, their fear replaced by a wave of relief and newfound faith. Atop his staff, the central orb pulses with a potent verdant light. The very heart of his incredible power, the mage now stands transformed, his confidence restored, poised to finally claim his role as their leader. His gaze, once downcast, is now a blade of pure determination, fixed upon the enemy with unwavering resolve. Even the colossal golem seems to pause, the reflection of the emerald barrier glittering in its crystalline eye. Desmond tightens his grip on the staff, ready to orchestrate the counterattack. A surge of his magic flows into his allies, and the entire party readies themselves, awaiting his command to charge. With a resonant thud, the mage strikes the base of his staff against the icy floor, sending a visible wave of green energy rippling out across the battlefield. His voice rings out, filled with unshakable conviction, giving the signal to unleash their final coordinated assault against the frozen behemoth. Desmond's spell surges into the female warrior, bolstering her vitality and strength. She feels a tide of raw power coursing through her very veins. The other combatants feel their own mana reserves begin to replenish at an accelerated rate, their bodies humming with readiness for the fight ahead. Even the elven mage's mental fortitude is sharpened, her eyes widening as she comprehends the incredible range of the spell. Desmond, too, feels the revitalizing effects of his own magic, as the frostbite on his nose vanishes in a soft green glow. However, despite the powerful buffs now empowering them, the battle was far from over. The ice golem, relentless, unleashed another deadly barrage of crystalline shards. Yet infused with Desmond's power, the team moved like phantoms, weaving through the storm with impossible grace. With a defiant smirk, the purple-haired warrior danced between the lethal projectiles, her taunts echoing as she effortlessly evaded the golem's fury. Rin, too, moved with a fluid grace, a confident smile playing on her lips as she glided through the crystal storm, finding the dance of death exhilaratingly simple. Their fleeting moment of triumph was cut short by Desmond's urgent cry, reminding them that a direct confrontation was suicide. He gestured wildly, forcing their attention to the true prize, the dungeon's heart, a brilliant core pulsing with energy just behind the colossal beast. With a resounding crack, Desmond slammed his staff into the frozen ground, his voice ringing with conviction. Victory lies not in felling the beast, but in shattering its core. Empowered and resolute, Rin accepted the new mission in a heartbeat. A fierce grin spread across her face as she surged forward, a blur of motion aimed at delivering the final decisive blow. But the battle was far from over. The ice golem reacted with chilling speed, its massive form moving to intercept her audacious charge. A desperate warning cry tore from the elf mage's lips as she watched her friend rush toward peril. Rin's eyes widened in shock. The monster had read her every move. She twisted at the last possible second, her blade barely deflecting the crushing blow, the sheer force of the impact sending her hurtling backward through the air. The mage was at her side in an instant, his voice filled with concern. As Rin fought to regain her breath, shaken but unharmed, Cenari and the other warrior watched the failed assault with grim determination, already preparing for the next attempt. The warrior's voice cut through the tension. "Don't forget the objective," he barked, his gaze fixed on the pulsating light of the dungeon core. Just then, the core began to recede, sinking slowly into the glacial mass of the golem's body. A wave of frustration washed over Desmond. The monster was protecting its only weakness. If that core vanished completely, their one and only path to victory would be sealed in ice forever. Panic flared in the eyes of Cenari and Desmond, their minds racing, unable to counter the golem's cunning new tactic. But in that moment of despair, a spark of fierce determination ignited in Desmond's expression as a desperate plan formed in his mind. He proposed a daring gambit of feint to catch the beast completely off guard. The strategy was simple, yet perilous. The team would become the bait, drawing the monster's undivided attention, while a single blade slipped through to strike the core. Without hesitation, Rin stepped forward to volunteer for the final strike, her confidence unwavering. "I'm the fastest," she declared, as the core sank ever deeper. With time slipping away, the team readied themselves for one final, desperate charge, fueled as shed by a sense of impending doom. They threw themselves into the fray with everything they had left. To set the trap, the party fanned out, their jeers and taunts echoing through the cavern, deliberately goading the colossal guardian. The creature of ice took the bait, its immense form pivoting slowly, its attention now fixed entirely on the scattered warriors. Cenari and the dwarf warrior pressed their advantage, their taunts escalating to keep the monster's gaze locked upon them. Utterly enraged, the golem's single, glowing eye burned with fury, focused solely on the adventurers who dared to provoke its wrath. This was it. Seizing the perfect opening, Desmond gave Rin the signal. Her gaze turned to steel, and in that instant, all the world faded away. She was a weapon, poised to strike, ready to exploit the critical distraction they had created. Rin exploded into motion, a streak of silver lightning hurtling past the lumbering colossus. Cenari could only watch, her breath caught in her throat, a silent prayer on her lips that their desperate gamble would pay off. The others watched with anxious eyes, their hopes and lives now resting entirely on Rin's legendary speed. At the same time, the golem unleashed a cataclysmic strike at the decoys, who scattered just in time, a hair's breadth from disaster. Desmond's eyes were wide, tracking every movement, knowing that their very survival hinged on this single, fleeting moment. The entire team held its breath, their collective faith a tangible force pushing Rin forward. A shared smile of near-certain victory spread amongst them. And then, Rin was airborne, a descending angel of vengeance, her sword arcing down with every ounce of her strength, aimed squarely at the crystalline heart. Her face is a mask of pure focus, every ounce of her being poured into this one final decisive strike as a fierce battle cry tears from her lips. With a final, desperate surge of strength, she brings her blade down upon the golem's glowing weak point, smashing it against the core. A brilliant explosion of light and energy erupts at the point of impact, and a triumphant smile spreads across her face, certain she has destroyed their foe. But her victory is short-lived. The smile vanishes, replaced by sheer disbelief as she realizes something is terribly wrong. To her horror, the core remains untouched, shimmering behind an unseen barrier that had effortlessly repelled her assault. A wave of panic washes over the team as they witness their last desperate gambit fail. It dawns on them that the golem isn't just a mindless beast. It's actively, consciously defending its own heart. A cold dread grips Desmond as the terrifying intelligence of their adversary sinks in. Despair clouds his vision. He sees their fate sealed, with no hope of escape. Their one chance for survival recedes as the crystal core sinks back into the glacial mass, a final taunting glint of light flashing before it vanishes. Sheer panic seizes the group as they watch their only path to victory being swallowed by the ice. As a single tear of helplessness traces a path down his cheek, Desmond resigns himself to their fate, but a furious roar from the blonde warrior shatters the suffocating silence. Her defiant cry cuts through his stupor, forcing Desmond's gaze upward once more. She screams at them, her voice raw with an unbreakable will, refusing to let them surrender, inspired by her fire. Cineri, the archer, takes his stand. He grips his bow, his knuckles white with renewed determination. As his teammates stare, caught off guard by his sudden resolve, Desmond looks on, stunned by the archer's audacity. Without a second's hesitation, Cineri launches himself into the air. He draws his bowstring taut in mid-flight, bellowing a chilling creed, "If one of us falls, another will always rise to take their place." The archer's words pierce Desmond's mind, echoing with a haunting familiarity as he watches, torn between awe and a creeping sense of dread. A ghost from his past flickers in his memory, a man who lived by that same ruthless philosophy. Meanwhile, Cineri pours every ounce of his mana into a single glowing arrow. He proudly declares his purpose as the arrow. Now a bolt of pure energy streaks through the air toward the disappearing core. The golem's crystalline eye snaps open, sensing the imminent danger. In the final, heart-stopping moment, the projectile strikes its target with explosive force. The impact shatters the thick ice encasing the core, but a new fear arises. What if the golem raises its barrier again? They watch, breathless, fearing the barrier will reappear and nullify their last chance. But one member of their team refuses to let that happen. Just as the golem's magic begins to coalesce, the elven mage unleashes a precise fireball, intercepting the defensive spell and blasting the path clear. Cineri's arrow continues its journey unimpeded, punching through the last vestiges of the golem's energy shield and homing in on the now defenseless core. Desmond can only watch, his mind reeling at the breathtaking, split-second coordination of his comrades. Even the blonde warrior is frozen in place, utterly stunned by the brilliant counterplay, while the rest of the team stares in awe, scarcely believing what they are witnessing. A web of cracks spreads across the crystal core before it finally explodes into 1,000 glittering shards. And an expression of pure relief washes over Desmond. A single thought echoes in his mind, a wave of exhaustion and triumph washing over him. They've actually won. As the fragments of the core rain down, Cineri allows himself a smug grin, earning a surprised glance from the elven mage while the team is still processing the impossible. Amazement is etched onto every face. Even Ren, whose own attack had failed, stands speechless at their incredible last-ditch victory. The great ice golem begins to groan and shudder as fissures race across its crystalline body until, with a deafening crash, the colossus collapses into a mountain of shattered ice. Just as the adventurers dared to breathe, a sudden, unnatural chill swept over them, seeping into their very bones. The frozen ground beneath their feet began to writhe, shifting and reshaping itself with an eerie intelligence. A new form rose from the crystalline chaos, a stark reminder that their ordeal was far from over. The icy construct then parted, unveiling a hidden passage that plunged into the dark heart of the dungeon. The golem was gone, but a far more enigmatic path now lay before them. Desmond stood in silent awe, his breath misting in the air as he surveyed the perfectly frozen landscape before his team. A colossal beast was locked in time, imprisoned within a tomb of solid ice. A triumphant thought sparked in his mind. His theory had been correct. He had gambled that destroying the dungeon's core would pacify all its guardians. The elven mage and the warrior turned to him, their faces etched with anticipation. Hanging on his every word, with a firm, confident gesture, Desmond prepared to declare their mission a success. A wave of jubilant cheers shattered the icy silence, celebrating the triumphant end to their perilous mission. His companions swarmed Desmond, their voices full of praise, hailing him for his brilliant leadership that had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. The blonde warrior embraced him in a fit of pure joy. But Desmond, ever humble, gently pushed away the accolades. He smiled warmly, insisting, "We did this together. This victory belongs to all of us." Their gaze then fell upon the frozen behemoth, where a soft, ethereal light pulsed from within its chest, the dungeon's core. But as their eyes adjusted, a collective gasp escaped them. It wasn't just the core, it was the legendary gem of wisdom. The very reason they had risked everything. Cenari and the blonde warrior stared, utterly dumbfounded. The ultimate prize, the object of their quest, had been right in front of them the entire time. A smug, knowing smile crept across the purple-haired woman's face as she watched the rival team celebrate a victory she now claimed as her own. In a blur of motion, a hand darted forward, plucking the gem of wisdom from its icy cradle. Desmond's party could only watch, paralyzed, as their rival claimed the priceless artifact. The purple-haired leader brought the glowing gem to her lips, relishing the taste of stolen victory with a triumphant smirk, with the gem now her bargaining chip. She turned to Desmond with a proposition. "Join me," she offered, "and you might see this treasure again." Her own companions exchanged bewildered glances, surprised by her sudden obsession with recruiting the mage. But she only smiled, her confidence unwavering, as she declared that her desire to possess Desmond's talent was now more intense than ever. One of her own teammates spoke up, defending Desmond's honor. "This was a team effort," she argued. "The treasure belongs to everyone." The leader dismissed her subordinate's plea without a second glance as Desmond cautiously asked, "Just to see the gem?" "Absolutely not," she sneered. "This is my leverage over you." With a taunting glint in her eyes, she leaned in, challenging him to make his choice. "So, what will it be?" But her arrogance had pushed him too far. The calm mage finally snapped. In a shocking burst of speed, Desmond lunged forward, his voice a low growl demanding, "Give it back." The purple-haired woman reeled back in disbelief, struck by a blow she never anticipated. One of her companions' face flushed red, caught completely off guard by Desmond's sudden and uncharacteristic display of power. The other was frozen in place, stunned by the raw aggression. Cenari and the rest of Desmond's own team could only watch his drastic move, their minds struggling to process what was happening. Even Ren and the archer were baffled by their leader's bold gambit. And then, from the shadows, a silver-haired figure materialized, striking at both Desmond and the rival leader with blinding speed. The newcomer's gaze was like ice, and his eyes held a glint of pure predatory danger. Chaos erupted. In the heart of the frozen dungeon, no one had any idea what was truly unfolding on this twisted battlefield. In a blur of motion, the mysterious figure lunges at Desmond, his speed and strength utterly overwhelming. Caught completely off guard, Desmond takes the full force of the devastating blow, and his team can only watch in horror as their leader crumples to the ground, defeated by the stranger. Screams of despair rip from the elven mage and the blonde warrior, their minds refusing to process the shocking betrayal unfolding before them. But it is the enraged archer who demands answers from their own teammate. His words exposing the unthinkable truth: the attacker is Jin. Clutching the coveted gem, Jin stands over them, his composure chilling as he declares with unnerving calm that he is in complete control of his actions. He reveals that his singular obsession, from the very beginning, was to possess the gem, explaining with a sneer that he first attempted to acquire it peacefully. However, the rival leader had refused to cooperate, prompting the incredulous archer to cry out, desperately reminding Jin of the friendship they once shared. The archer's world shatters, unable to comprehend the treachery, but Jin merely scoffs, dismissing the very notion of friendship as a pathetic weakness. He clarifies with cold finality that they were nothing more than tools for his purpose. And a sickening memory of conversations about treasure thieves dawns on the archer. The horrifying truth crashes down on him as a sinister aura radiates from Jin, who finally reveals his true allegiance to a notorious criminal organization, the Black Underarm. A wave of pure terror washes over the elven mage and the warrior as the infamous name echoes in the tense air. A malevolent laugh escapes the traitor's lips as he confirms their worst fears. His time with them was nothing but a calculated infiltration, a means to an end. White-hot fury and the bitter sting of betrayal consumed the archer, his jaw clenched so tightly it aches. Without a moment's hesitation, he draws his bow, loosing an arrow aimed straight at the heart of his former comrade. But Jin reacts with little more than a flicker of annoyance. With a casual flick of his sword, he effortlessly bats the arrow aside, calling the attempt pathetic as his voice drips with mockery. He sneers, stating he has always been perfectly aware of the archer's limited power, his contemptuous gaze then sweeping over the rest of the team. Without their leader, he scoffs. They are nothing but a group of weak, D-rank adventurers. He arrogantly boasts that his true strength far eclipses that of a mere C-rank adventurer. And the archer can only grit his teeth as the bitter truth sinks in. He now understands the crushing disparity in their power, while the warrior and the elven mage can only watch the nightmare unfold. They are paralyzed by a toxic mix of helplessness and rage as Jin announces that with his identity revealed, he has no more reason to hold back. All the while, Desmond and the rival team's leader lie motionless on the cold ground, gravely wounded and lost to consciousness. A sinister smile spreads across Jin's face, his eyes gleaming with pure malice as he declares his chilling intention to eliminate every last one of them. With a predator's grace, Jin lunges forward, determined to silence all witnesses to his treachery, while Desmond remains on the ground, utterly defenseless and vulnerable. The archer silently curses his own weakness, a gut-wrenching certainty telling him they stand no chance against the monster Jin has become. In a final, desperate gambit, he screams at his teammates to run for their lives as he moves to hoist Desmond's unconscious form onto his shoulders. He urges them to flee, but in a flash, Jin is there, blocking their only escape route, poised to end them before they can take a single step. A cruel smile plays on the traitor's lips as he whispers a promise that no one will escape, before unleashing a deadly strike aimed directly at the archer. The archer shuts his eyes, bracing for the inevitable end, but a brilliant flash of light erupts, intercepting Jin's sword just inches from his target. The rival team's leader is somehow back on his feet, battered and bleeding. He has miraculously managed to block the fatal blow. Just a moment ago, the archer's life was flashing before his eyes, his body locked in terror. But now, against all odds, the rival leader stands between him and certain death, sacrificing himself to intercept Jin's deadly strike. A flash of disbelief, then pure annoyance, crosses Jin's face as his attack is thwarted yet again. Though agony sears through him, the man holds his ground, his will unbroken, refusing to give an inch to the betrayer. A wave of shock ripples through the team. The elf mage stares, dumbfounded that their old rival is now their shield. The blonde warrior looks on, her astonishment giving way to a fragile, flickering hope. Jin senses something is wrong. His strikes, once unstoppable, now rebound as if clashing against an unseen, unbreakable wall. Frustration boils within the traitor. He can't comprehend the source of this formidable spectral defense. Then, a collective gasp draws every eye to a staggering figure. It's Desmond, the man they believe was broken and unconscious, now rising to his feet. He sways, his strength nearly spent. Yet it is undeniably him, the wellspring of this mysterious power, the final bastion of hope for his beleaguered team. The truth dawns on Jin in the very instant he fell. Desmond must have unleashed a final desperate spell. The rival leader smirks, mocking Jin's oversight. He sees it now, the traitor's fatal error in judgment. A cruel smile twists Jin's lips as he confesses his hesitation to strike the final blow against Desmond. He had thought, foolishly, that the man might still have some use, now consumed by fury. Jin curses himself for not ending the team leader when he had the chance. Both sides are frozen, captivated by the tense standoff, utterly stunned by this impossible turn of events. However, the moment is fleeting. Jin merely scoffs at the setback, his arrogance unshaken, proclaiming that he has already secured the prize he came for. With his objective complete, the traitor turns to make his escape down a frozen corridor. He pauses, casting one last derisive look over his shoulder. He calls them naive fools, so easily played because of their pathetic reliance on one another. The venom in his words, the casual dismissal of camaraderie, cuts deep into Desmond's soul, stoking the embers of his rage. Desmond's hand tightens into a fist, his mind reeling with the bitter sting of betrayal and the twisted mockery of everything he believed camaraderie stood for. A wave of utter defeat washes over him. The plan was a failure. The gem was lost. And then, cutting through the silence, an unexpected voice rings out, sharp and clear, labeling Jin the true fool in this game, and every head snaps towards the sound. Even the rival elf and dwarf spin around, their faces masks of confusion. All eyes fall to the ground, where the rival team's leader, a woman they had all written off as unconscious, begins to stir. Pushing through the pain, she forces herself to her feet. A look of pure defiance etched on her face. She locks eyes with Jean, her voice raspy but firm, warning him that he should never have underestimated her. She calls him out on his blinding arrogance. She points out that his contempt for them was so complete. He never even bothered to learn her true adventurer class. Desmond and his team can only watch, stunned, as she reminds Jean of the crucial detail he so carelessly overlooked. With a triumphant glint in her eye, she declares her true class a thief. And as proof, she holds up the very gem he thought he had stolen. She makes it clear the treasure is not his for the taking. The smug confidence on Jean's face shatters, replaced by a mask of raw, unfiltered disbelief. The realization hits him like a physical blow. He's been played, outmaneuvered, and his prize snatched from his grasp. Desmond's team is simply speechless. Even her own teammates, the elf mage and the dwarf warrior, stare with jaws agape, struggling to process the incredible turn of events. Jean freezes mid-stride, his escape forgotten. He slowly turns, his mind racing, trying to pinpoint the exact moment he was so thoroughly outsmarted. A victorious smirk plays on the thief's lips as she savors the look on his face, drinking in every ounce of the traitor's profound humiliation. But her victory is short-lived. The immense strain on her battered body proves too much, and she crumples to the ground as her comrades watch in horror, rushing to her side. Seeing his opportunity in the chaos, Jean seizes the moment to resume his escape. From the shadows of the corridor, he glances back, a twisted smile on his face. It's a look of bitter frustration mixed with a strange amusement, leaving Desmond's team to stare, utterly bewildered by the rival leader's incredible gambit. A bitter laugh, a mix of relief and twisted victory, escapes him. Jean's voice drips with venom as he concedes his fatal error, underestimating the very adventurers he had dismissed as worthless. His eyes, burning with an unquenchable hatred, lock on to them, a silent admission of his defeat in this moment. But this is not the end. He vows a brutal reckoning the next time their paths cross. A palpable wave of malice, a promise of death, rolls down the corridor, forcing a cold shudder of dread through every soul present. As he fades into the shadows, Jean plants a seed of paranoia. His parting words a chilling whisper. His organization's reach is limitless. The threat lingers in the air, an echo in the sudden deafening silence of the corridor where the traitor once stood. Back at the dungeon's maw, the adventurers stand in a daze, the raw shock of the confrontation slowly giving way to reality. The rival leader meets Desmond's gaze as their once competing teams work as one, carefully moving their fallen. With the injured secured and ready for transport, the mission officially draws to a close, not with celebration, but with the quiet efficiency of survival. The focus sharpens on the still forms of the thief and her leader, their faces pale in unconsciousness, the day's most unlikely saviors. A silent, mutual understanding passes between them as Desmond and his squad observe their former adversaries carrying their own, a somber procession fading into the distance. His team stands beside him, a solid, unbroken line. In their eyes, the mission was a victory. In his hand, Desmond clutches the recovered gem, its weight a symbol of a lesson learned in blood and betrayal, the profound power of standing together. A new resolve hardens his features as he embraces a harsh truth. His leadership now paints a target on his back. Within the formidable walls of their headquarters, the slow process of healing, both physical and psychological, begins for the weary teams. The blonde warrior, her usual fire returning to her eyes, greets the dwarf with renewed vigor, a clear sign of her recovery. Her comrades gather around, their faces etched with concern. She waves off their worries with a casual air, brushing aside the severity of her injuries before thanking Desmond for his protection and asking for his whereabouts. The elven mage provides the answer, her voice low, explaining that the commander had summoned Desmond for a formal debriefing. A shadow of concern crosses their faces. They've all noticed the distance in Desmond's eyes since the betrayal. The view dissolves, reforming on the heavy door of the commander's office, a threshold where their future will be forged. Beyond the door, the commander receives Desmond not with formality, but with a disarmingly warm smile. He offers his congratulations for a mission successfully concluded, leaning back with an air of confidence, affirming that promoting Desmond's team was a gamble that paid off. But Desmond's face remains a mask of grim resolve, his response a clipped, hollow thank you that barely registers. Unfazed, the commander produces a bottle, his demeanor shifting to one of celebration as he attempts to break through Desmond's somber shell. He insists this is a moment for triumph, a testament to his team's incredible feat, yet Desmond remains unmoved, the very idea of celebration feeling like a betrayal. He cannot forget the price of their victory, a cost paid in blood by others, a success that had little to do with his own strength. Sensing this, the commander's cheerful facade cracks, asking if his worry is for the two injured adventurers, and quickly offers his reassurance. He concedes their injuries are grave, but recovery is certain. The scene cuts away, showing us the sterile white of the infirmary, where the mission's heroes lie under magical care. The commander speaks with absolute pride in his medical staff, his voice filled with unwavering confidence in their skills. He guarantees they will be back on their feet, good as new. Even the rival leader, whose life hung by a thread, is on the path to a complete recovery thanks to their advanced restorative arts. The same holds true for the thief, resting peacefully as potent magics knit her wounds closed and mend her broken body. But the commander's words are a cold comfort. Desmond carries the weight of their pain, a deep-seated conviction that his own weakness was the cause of their suffering. You did everything you could, and more, the commander insists, his voice softening as he reminds Desmond of a conversation they once had. He then reveals the mission's hidden objective. It was never just about a gem. It was a crucible, designed to teach Desmond the true weight of leadership, the bonds of camaraderie, and the fire of unwavering resolve. With his head bowed, Desmond confesses that his very understanding of the situation is the source of the profound fear now gripping his heart. Anguish contorts his features at the mere thought of his cherished friends being harmed once more. The commander reacts with a knowing chuckle, appreciating Desmond's raw honesty as his assistant silently observes the exchange. After offering a respectful bow, Desmond exits the office, leaving the commander and his aide in solitude. The young leader walks alone through the echoing hallway, visibly overwhelmed by the crushing weight of his new responsibilities. It is then that the commander's assistant voices her concern, believing the mantle of leadership is far too heavy a burden for him to carry. The commander thoughtfully surmises that Desmond has never experienced true companionship, which is why he shoulders every ounce of blame himself. His assistant quietly processes this heavy revelation, finally grasping the sheer complexity of the young man's emotional turmoil. The commander asserts that although Desmond is on the verge of breaking, this trial is a necessary crucible for his growth. Then, in a comedic turn, his assistant promptly confiscates the commander's bottle of liquor, earning a helpless complaint from her superior. Meanwhile, Desmond freezes mid-stride in the corridor as a strange, ethereal blue energy begins to emanate from his feet. Tormented, the young leader desperately wonders what he must do to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. The agonizing memories of the mission assault him, steeling his resolve to never again see his comrades in such peril. The chilling thought that luck might not be with them next time, that one of them could actually die, fills him with a deep, gnawing dread. Jean's lethal promise of vengeance echoes in the chambers of his mind, a constant, grim reminder of the threat that looms over them all. A brutal vision of violence flashes before his eyes, paralyzing him with the visceral fear of witnessing his friends broken and bloodied once more. Desperate, he clings to a single, burning conviction he must do more. He must find the strength to protect them. His anguish transforms, hardening his expression into one of intense, unyielding determination, as if he has finally found his answer. And in that very instant, Desmond finds himself in a vast and gloomy hall, a place utterly alien and far removed from the corridor he was just in. The young leader scans his surroundings, completely disoriented, his mind reeling as he struggles to understand where he is. He knows he has never seen this room before, questioning if it could possibly be a hidden part of the headquarters. From the deepest shadows, a mysterious figure with a sinister smile begins to slowly reveal itself. The entity offers a chilling welcome, confessing that it deliberately drew him to this very spot. Startled, Desmond demands to know his captor's identity, but before he can react, a swift force with glowing red eyes lunges at him. Desmond's face contorts in sheer panic at the speed of the imminent attack. An invisible impact slams into him, sending him flying as the ground erupts with energy. He lands hard, the painful impact with the stone floor stealing the air from his lungs, still on the ground. Desmond sees an imposing figure striding towards him. Unable to comprehend what is happening, his eyes widen as he tries to identify this new adversary. A woman with stark white hair and a sinister smile comes into focus, revealing that she knows not only of his existence, but of the power he wields. With sharp fangs glinting, the mysterious woman offers him a deeply unsettling greeting. A wave of terror grips Desmond as he feels the oppressive, threatening aura radiating from her. He instinctively scrambles backward, recognizing in an instant that he is facing a superior threat. Without a moment's hesitation, he activates his appraisal skill to uncover the woman's identity. His eyes flared with a blue, analytical light as he focused on the cryptic stranger, but the result of his appraisal flooded his senses, leaving him utterly paralyzed by the impossible truth he now beheld. He stared, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. A tremor ran through his hand as it clenched into a fist, a raw, physical reaction to the impossible truth before him. The appraisal skill flared to life, painting a horrifying picture in his mind, stats so monstrous they could only belong to an S-rank adventurer. Pinned to the ground, he could only watch. Desmond's eyes narrowed, desperately trying to place the face of his assailant. A predatory smile spread across her lips, revealing a hint of fangs. She introduced herself with chilling pride, a name that sent ice through his veins, a member of the Black Armpit organization. The words hit him like a physical blow, leaving him utterly paralyzed. His eyes widened, a storm of shock and terror raging within. The woman leveled a finger at his heart, her smile never faltering as she declared his life was the only thing she had come for. Black Armpit. The name echoed in the chambers of his mind, and the full, terrifying weight of his predicament began to crash down upon him. He could almost hear Jean's voice, a frantic warning about this very shadow organization, a syndicate that hunted members of the Chevalier Gardens. A cold sweat beaded on his brow. He remembered the threat, the promise of his demise, but he never dreamed they would strike so soon, so deep within his own sanctuary. The sheer audacity of it left him breathless, an enemy assassin, standing in the heart of their headquarters. His attacker merely smiled, her confidence an unnerving spectacle. Her poise confirmed his deepest fear. This was no ordinary foe. He was facing the might of an S-rank enemy. The realization was a crushing weight. Desmond's knuckles turned white as he gripped his staff, a desperate resolve hardening within him. He had to stop her. The woman saw it in his eyes and met his defiance with a sinister, mocking grin. She spoke as if reading his mind, dismissing his frantic plans before they could even fully form. A jolt of surprise shot through the young leader, realizing his intentions had been laid bare. In the next instant, she was a blur of motion, her power erupting forward and shattering his magical barrier as if it were glass. An arrogant laugh escaped her lips as she reveled in her own overwhelming strength, declaring, "No clever little strategy can save you from this." He raised his staff, a desperate attempt to parry the incoming blow. But the sheer force of the impact was more than he could bear. His face twisted in a mask of pain and shock as the raw energy of the attack consumed him. Hovering in the air, she watched with detached amusement as Desmond's body was slammed into the unforgiving ground below. He was utterly overwhelmed, battered, breathless, and broken. The young man fought to rise, his body screaming in protest. His tormentor only scoffed at his resilience, creating a sphere of incandescent flame while reminding him that his support magic was useless alone. The heat washed over him, a fiery cage closing in. Desmond's eyes darted around, searching for any sliver of an escape route, but it was too late. The sphere of fire detonated with apocalyptic force, swallowing his figure whole in the inferno. A concussive blast of smoke and ash ripped through the chamber, leaving the outcome shrouded in a thick, choking cloud. Then, through the haze, a boot slammed onto the scorched earth, wreathed in a verdant, life-giving aura. Desmond emerged from the dust, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken, a desperate enchantment spell pulsing around him to mend his broken form. His enemy's lips curled into a smirk, her voice dripping with amused disdain. "Oh, using a little magic to patch yourself up. How pointless," she declared, her tone turning to ice. "You have no chance of victory." The young leader gritted his teeth, the words a bitter pill to swallow. He knew she was right. He could feel the chasm in power between them, knew his own stats were a pale shadow of hers, and yet a core of pure determination inside him refused to surrender. The woman simply watched, a condescending smile playing on her lips, seeing only a fool's pointless struggle. She raised a single finger, a pinprick of abyssal energy gathering at its tip. "Your time is up," she announced, her voice a death knell. Pure, undiluted terror was reflected in Desmond's eyes as he understood this was the end. His attacker unleashed her power, a swirling vortex of darkness. It was an overwhelming torrent of annihilation, a technique that blotted out the light and loomed over him like a wave of despair. And through it all, she wore a truly sadistic smile. With chilling finality, she declares that his time is over. The young leader can only stare, paralyzed by the overwhelming scale of the assault. A tide of dark energy surges forward, a promise of certain annihilation. Engulfed, Desmond surrenders to his own powerlessness, wondering if this is truly how it all ends. But in that final moment, as all hope drains away, his eyes catch sight of an impossible arrival. As if from nowhere, a powerful sorceress materializes amidst the swirling chaos, her eyes widening in surprise upon seeing Desmond. Desmond recognizes the newcomer as Dorothy's master, a realization that stuns his attacker into inaction. He watches in awe as the deadly assault simply dissipates, the menacing orb of energy rendered completely inert. The lethal magic dissolves into a harmless shower of confetti and vibrant petals that drift down around him, leaving the young leader completely lost in the moment. Utterly disoriented, the young man can only gaze at the bizarrely beautiful spectacle. The white-haired woman then congratulates herself on her beautiful magic, deepening Desmond's confusion as he stares at her, trying to process the sudden shift in her demeanor and appearance with a theatrical flourish. The mysterious woman introduces herself as Rafim Nolan, Master Noah. Rafim casually reveals that she is Dorothy's adoptive mother and a member of the 1st Brigade of the Garden. An insignia confirms her high rank within the clan, a fact that leaves Desmond even more thunderstruck. The shock is so profound that his cry of astonishment seems to reverberate through the very foundations of the headquarters. Before their very eyes, Desmond and Dorothy watch in amazement as the entire illusory space shatters, revealing the true extent of Rafim's power. He grasps the unbelievable truth the entire battlefield was a grand illusion, woven by Rafim's incredible magic. Dorothy immediately confronts her master about the terrifying assault, but Rafim simply waves it off, calmly replying that it was merely a slightly rough orientation. The word orientation hangs in the air, leaving Desmond utterly baffled. He cannot fathom how such a brutal attack could be a simple welcome. Rafim then reveals that Cynthia had spoken of him, praising his promising skills as an enchanter. She explains she was eager to meet the young man who was Dorothy's partner, but she adds with a scoff that she instead found him on the brink of annihilation, completely lost. Desmond pleads for her to clarify her words, unable to comprehend the logic behind her terrifying test. Rafim's playful demeanor vanishes, her tone turning sharp as she asks him directly why he chose to face her instead of fleeing. The question catches Desmond completely off guard, leaving him speechless. Searching for an answer that won't come, she closes the distance between them, her voice laced with scorn, telling him that by not running when he knew he was hopelessly outmatched, he had proven himself to be an absolute fool. The young man stammers, attempting to defend his choice, arguing that he couldn't possibly turn his back on his comrades and flee, but Rafim cuts through his noble excuse, explaining that his sacrifice would have been utterly meaningless, as his friends would have been the next to fall. With a gesture of absolute authority, she lectures that his only logical move was to escape and summon reinforcements. The harsh truth of her words leaves Desmond frozen in place. As he grapples with the error of his ways, the master clarifies with a mocking tone that she didn't mean calling for help from just any low-ranking member. She reminds him that elite, S-rank warriors like herself exist within the garden, the very people he should have sought out. A cold sweat trickles down Desmond's face as the full magnitude of his mistake crashes down on him. Rafim tells him he is shouldering a responsibility that was never his to carry, insisting on blaming himself for every single failure. Dorothy's voice joined the scolding, echoing Rafim's warning that his solitary crusade would save no one. With a surge of frustration, the master demanded to know why he so stubbornly refused to trust in the strength of his allies. The master's words pierced through his defenses, echoing in his mind and igniting a sudden, startling revelation in his eyes. The young leader struggled to form a response, but the words felt like ash in his throat. Sensing his turmoil, Dorothy gently reached out and took his hands. Her touch was a silent promise of unconditional support, a tender gesture in the heavy air. She voiced her agreement with their master, her gaze unwavering. She reaffirmed that this immense burden was not his to carry alone, sincerely pleading with him to share the weight of their mission with the rest of the team. She reminded him that every one of their comrades felt the same ache, wishing they could have done more to stand by his side. The sorceress assured him that just as he worried for their safety, they worried just as deeply, if not more, for his. With a vulnerable confession, Dorothy admitted that they felt lonely and pushed aside when he refused to rely on their strength. Her words struck him with the force of a physical blow. The raw honesty of her plea shattered his hardened exterior, moving him to his very core. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotion, his vision blurred with tears as he finally grasped the true value of their bond. A storm of self-reproach washed over him as he admitted, to himself and to them, that he never truly understood what it meant to have a team. Through the veil of his tears, a profound truth crystallized. He was surrounded by allies, people he could finally, truly depend on. As Dorothy comforted him, the crushing weight on his heart began to dissolve, freeing him from the self-imposed prison of solitude. From a distance, Rafim watched the scene with a deeply satisfied smile, pleased that the seeds of her lesson had finally bloomed. Dorothy pulled her teammate into a firm hug, a moment their master simply viewed as a messy but essential part of growing up. The young leader reflected, acknowledging his inexperience. Yet now, he understood his role within the clan with a newfound clarity. At the same time, Rafim recalled Cynthia's impassioned praise for him. She knew instantly that the girl's feelings were far more complex than simple friendship. A mischievous, scheming smile crept across her face. The master hatched a plan to tell Cynthia everything, eagerly anticipating the delightfully chaotic reaction. And as if on cue, Cynthia herself appeared in the doorway. She was completely unaware of the emotional drama that had just unfolded. With the silent grace of a predator, Rafim slid over to Cynthia's side. She was ready to spring her little trap. Cynthia's eyes landed on the scene and immediately misinterpreted it, seeing only Desmond weeping in another woman's embrace. Rafim seized the perfect moment of confusion, whispering a few choice words into Cynthia's ear and unleashing a tempest of jealous fury. The master wore a smug grin, stepping back to revel in the beautiful chaos she had just orchestrated. A silent, dangerous storm now loomed over the utterly oblivious young leader. Drowning in embarrassment, Desmond scrambled to wipe his tears and compose himself. The young man stammered an apology to Dorothy, who simply offered him a warm, understanding smile in return. Desmond confessed his shame for having broken down, but Dorothy was merely overjoyed that he was finally trusting them. His mind, however, was stuck. It was fixated on the very specific detail of where he had rested his head. The image of finding such comfort there replayed in his mind on a loop. The memory sent a fresh wave of heat to his face, making him blush an even deeper crimson. The poor leader was completely frozen, paralyzed by sheer mortification. Desmond's mind felt like it was about to explode, torn between crippling embarrassment and a single untimely thought about his incredible luck. His wandering gaze finally landed on a furious, blushing Cynthia, with Rafim peering from behind her, visibly savoring the pandemonium. A whirlwind of jealousy churned in Cynthia's eyes as she processed the sight of Desmond crying in another's arms. Desmond began to panic, trying desperately to explain the misunderstanding, but the words wouldn't come, caught in a knot of shock and fear. For Cynthia, the overwhelming mix of embarrassment and rage manifested as an all-consuming fiery blush. The scene shifts, transporting us to the bustling Labyrinth Association, the nerve center for all adventurers. Inside its grand hall, a man unleashes his fury upon a stone wall, his raw aggression sending shivers through his nearby teammates. A red-haired woman cautiously approaches, attempting to soothe the enraged warrior. A man named Adele, but he is far beyond calming, whirling around to shout that peace is impossible after what they've just endured. The reason for his volcanic anger then spills out their prestigious B-rank team has been stripped of its status. Demoted to the lowly C rank, the red-haired woman can only sigh in weary acceptance, acknowledging that their disastrous losing streak in the dungeons has finally led them to this grim reality. All around them, other adventurers watch from the shadows, their whispers turning into cruel mockery. Adele hears every word, his face contorting in a mask of suppressed rage. The news spreads like a plague through the association, revealing the team has been officially barred from B-rank dungeons. Their rivals relish the moment, openly speculating that a drop to D rank is next, a pathetic end for a team once hailed as rising stars of the future. The taunts escalate into a chorus of ridicule, with others jeering about how utterly humiliated they would be in their position. Adele's team stands isolated in the center of the hall, crushed by the weight of 100 mocking eyes and venomous whispers. Their blonde swordsman murmurs in regret, admitting their own past arrogance forged many of the enemies now surrounding them. But for Adele, reason is lost to fury. With a guttural, blood-curdling scream, he finally snaps, cursing every last person who dares to speak their name with such contempt. His rage boils over into violence as he lunges forward, seizing one of the adventurers by the collar and sparking a brawl. His teammates scramble to intervene, pleading with him to stop, warning him that this outburst will only dig their grave deeper. The adventurer in Adele's grasp just smirks, tauntingly questioning the strength of his grip. To his teammates' horror, the man confirms it with a sneer. Adele's hold is pathetically weak. The confrontation devolves into a public spectacle of humiliation, as onlookers begin to question if this team was ever truly powerful to begin with. Though his companions try to drag him away, Adele is frozen, paralyzed by a storm of shame and impotent rage. Just then, a new whisper begins to circulate, a rumor about their former enchanter, a mage of supposedly legendary skill. The mere mention of their old ally's name sparks a flicker of shock and renewed anger on Adele's face. The gossip mongers connect the dots. The team's catastrophic decline began the moment their enchanter left. And now, he's rumored to have joined an elite clan. This insinuation that they were nothing without him, that he abandoned them for greater things, is the final shattering blow to Adele's pride. Unable to endure another moment of this torture, the team retreats under a barrage of whispers and scornful glares, finally finding themselves sitting in a heavy, suffocating silence. They are left to contemplate the ruins of their career. The red-haired woman breaks the silence, her voice heavy with their lack of options. She confesses they're completely broke, with no funds to hire a new enchanter, revealing a nasty wound. She explains that their gear is failing and every dungeon run ends in disaster. Her voice cracks with distress as she admits their debts are spiraling, pushing them toward the brink of utter bankruptcy. The blonde warrior adds to the grim picture, reminding them that one more failure will likely cost them their adventurer licenses, ending everything for good. Consumed by despair, Adele can only bite his thumb, a portrait of helpless, seething rage as his world crumbles around him. The humiliation of their new reality eats away at him like a poison. It is his blonde companion who finally breaks the oppressive silence again. He admits that the rumor from the hall is stuck in his mind, a thought he can't shake. The woman's somber expression confirms his unspoken fear. Their downfall, she agrees, began the very moment Desmond walked away. It's more than just bad luck, she confesses. She feels a constant, unnatural weight pressing down on her very soul. A sudden chill runs down Adele's spine as he confesses a grim truth: their stamina drains faster, and their luck has turned catastrophically sour. In a flash of terrible clarity, a horrifying conclusion dawns on Adele. His eyes, now bloodshot with fury, fixate on the image of the one he believes is the culprit. His companions stare back, bewildered by his sudden manic revelation, but Adele, lost in his rage, smashes his fist into the ground. He roars one name, blaming Desmond for every misfortune that has befallen them. Convinced his former companion laid a curse to orchestrate their ruin, his mind becomes a storm of violent fantasies, and he vows to exact a vengeance on Desmond so cruel it will shatter him. The red-haired woman in their party attempts to reason with him, her voice a sliver of doubt against his roaring certainty that Desmond is to blame. Just then, a disembodied voice cuts through the air, mocking their pathetic state. As the humiliated party turns to leave, Adele's gaze burns with a pure, unadulterated hatred. He is utterly consumed by his thirst for retribution when the sound of approaching footsteps shatters their moment of despair. A young man with striking silver hair emerges from the shadows, a radiant, unsettling smile playing on his lips as he claims to know of Desmond. This mysterious figure reveals he recently ventured into a dungeon with Desmond, labeling him the most pathetic enchanter he's ever seen, all while his disturbing smile never falters. The stranger dismisses his own identity as irrelevant, insisting he only wishes to be of service. Adele's party can only stare back, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. They question his motives. Why would a complete stranger suddenly offer them aid? But the intense, malicious glint in his eyes confirms his offer is anything but kind. It becomes chillingly clear his intentions are far from pure, and soon, his true motivation is laid bare. He offers them a guaranteed path to vengeance against Desmond, and with that dark promise hanging in the air, the scene shifts, transporting us to a quiet and prosperous city. Our view settles upon the great library of Bristol, an imposing sanctuary of stone and parchment dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge. Within its hallowed halls, a reverent silence hangs in the air, the scent of old books filling the space between endless shelves where countless scholars quietly toil. And there, among them, we find Desmond, completely lost in the pages of an ancient tome, reflecting on everything he has just learned. He's come to understand the profound complexities of enchantment, realizing with a jolt that he has been blindly, almost naively, depending on his unique multiplication skill. But the true revelation, the one that shakes him to his core, is the discovery of a revolutionary method to apply that very power. Desmond uncovers the technique of enchantment stacking, a concept so groundbreaking it leaves him breathless. He finally understands that his ability isn't based on simple addition. It multiplies the base power, creating a cascade of exponential growth. A slow smile spreads across the young enchanter's face as he begins to calculate the impossible power he could now achieve. He muses that this method isn't just a path to invincibility. It's something far, far greater. It opens a door to a universe of possibilities. Yet his excitement is cut short as his research reveals a chilling fact: the technique is considered forbidden, and his practice is legally banned. And just as he begins to wonder why, a mysterious hooded figure materializes behind him. A soft voice greets him, appearing as if from nowhere. The sudden sound shatters his concentration, making him jump. Flustered, Desmond quickly gestures for her to be quiet. His frantic motion, however, only succeeds in drawing the curious gazes of everyone nearby. It's Cynthia, who explains that she finished her mission early and decided to find him. Of course, Her true intention was to playfully check in on him, a warm smile gracing her lips when she learned the studious boy was holed up in the library. She leans in closer, her voice a low murmur as she praises his admirable dedication to his studies. Her sudden proximity sends a jolt through him, and a pleasant, distracting scent fills his senses. Cynthia, of course, is keenly aware of the effect she's having. She offers him a mischievous, playful glance from beneath her hood, overwhelmed by her presence. A deep blush creeps up Desmond's neck as he feels utterly and completely cornered. Lost in a moment of pure contentment, the young man sighed, whispering how truly wonderful libraries could be as his gaze fell upon Cynthia, whose serene beauty left him spellbound. For a fleeting instant, all words escaped him, his thoughts consumed by a single, overwhelming realization: his companion was breathtakingly beautiful. He mused that her widespread fame was only natural. She was, after all, an S-rank adventurer renowned for both her immense power and her gentle heart. But then, the serene spell was broken, as Desmond suddenly realized that the library's hushed silence was focused entirely on his companion. A wave of whispers rippled through the aisles as recognition dawned. The legendary S-rank adventurer, Cynthia, was among them. The weight of their stares was a silent signal that it was time for a swift retreat. Even the librarian, attempting to restore order, found herself starstruck, her voice faltering at the sight of the fabled heroine in the flesh. The name echoed in the whispers: the ice-blooded princess, a title that sent a deep crimson blush creeping up Cynthia's neck. Desmond glanced at her, puzzled by the moniker, only to find her wearing an expression of pure mortification, as if wishing the very floor would swallow her. To hasten their exit, Cynthia took charge, her fingers wrapping firmly around Desmond's wrist as she pulled him urgently toward the doors. Her decisive action only fueled the fire, sparking a fresh storm of speculation as every eye in the room now fixated on the mysterious young man with the princess. The crowd's collective imagination leaped to a single, scandalous conclusion: he must be her secret lover, a thought that brought a fresh wave of heat to both their faces. Utterly overwhelmed by the escalating scene, Cynthia insisted on leaving, towing an equally flustered and bewildered Desmond behind her. With her cheeks burning and her resolve set, a mortified Cynthia dragged Desmond away, her determined pace a clear signal of her need to escape the prying eyes. He watched her, his mind reeling from the sudden chaotic whirlwind of their departure, as the famed heroine tried desperately to shield her face within the shadow of her hood. But there was no hiding the deep blush that painted her cheeks as they hurried from the library, with Cynthia leading the charge, her hand never once releasing its grip on his. The cool metal of her gauntlet against his skin was a stark, thrilling reminder of their sudden and unexpected closeness. Lost in the flurry of their escape, Desmond felt a fierce blush rise to his own cheeks, his heart hammering against his ribs at her touch. Yet despite the embarrassment, a faint smile graced his lips as he savored the moment. Just then, Cynthia glanced back, her face breaking into a radiant smile that cut through all the tension. In that instant, the frantic escape transformed into something almost magical. Once they were safely outside, the warrior turned to him, her voice soft with apology for the commotion she had caused. She admitted shyly that she had only wanted to see him, never intending to interrupt his important research. Desmond quickly brushed off her concerns, insisting it was no trouble at all, and that the library's secrets could wait for another day. A bright, genuine smile lit up his face as he confessed that, in truth, he was far happier spending this time with her, his sincere words touching her deeply. She gazed at him with an undeniable tenderness, but the moment was broken when Desmond recalled her nickname, and the mention of the ice-blooded princess made Cynthia flush all over again. With a sigh of resignation, she explained that S-rank adventurers are often saddled with titles they have no choice but to endure. Curiosity piqued. Desmond recalled that his other companion, Rafim, was known by the fearsome title of Crimson Madness. Cynthia confirmed that Rafim's moniker stemmed from her ferocious and destructive battle urges, a revelation that sent a genuine chill down Desmond's spine. His mind flashed back to his own duel with Rafim, and he realized with dawning horror just how much power she must have been holding in reserve. Desmond then mused aloud, wondering if Cynthia's title was a tribute to her cool princess-like beauty, which earned him a charming and utterly satisfied smile. As she savored the compliment, Desmond voiced his earnest desire to one day witness her legendary strength on the battlefield for himself. Their moment was shattered by the sound of desperate shouts, as his companions, Ren and Garen, came sprinting into view, calling his name with frantic urgency. A sudden clamor shatters the evening calm, forcing Desmond and Cynthia to turn, their eyes questioning the source of the commotion. The news that follows strikes them with the force of a thunderclap. Their dear friend, Dorothy, has been abducted. As the sky bleeds into a fiery sunset, the shocking revelation paints the world in hues of desperate urgency. With not a single moment to spare, the group sprints towards the main headquarters, their hearts pounding in a frantic search for answers. As they burst through the doors, they are met by the grim-faced Rafim, whose somber expression immediately confirms their deepest fears about Dorothy's disappearance. Rafim's voice is heavy as she recounts the story. Dorothy was sent on a routine errand, but she never returned, and her magical signature simply vanished from the world. The leader's deduction is chilling an ambush, carried out by someone with the terrifying ability to completely conceal their presence. This thought ignites a fire of pure, unadulterated worry in Desmond's soul. Driven by a desperate need to act, the young man bolts, disappearing into the twilight, his mind consumed by a single unwavering mission to find his friend. Just then, a guard rushes in, breathless, with startling information. The mercenary group has captured 2 suspicious individuals, and the kidnappers have a single demand: they will reveal Dorothy's location only to Desmond. The words hit Desmond like a physical blow. He stands frozen, utterly stunned, grappling with the impossible question of why the captors are specifically seeking him out. Bewildered, Desmond's mind races, trying to connect the dots between himself and his friend's kidnapping. When the horrifying realization finally dawns, the 2 captured individuals are ghosts from his past, members of his former sword clan. As night fully descends, the group moves with grim purpose toward the prison where the traitors are being held. They soon arrive at the city prison, a foreboding structure of cold stone in deep shadows, a place where they pray answers will finally come to light. From the darkness of her cell, one of his former companions meets his gaze with an icy glare, the air thick with a palpable, simmering resentment. She points a trembling finger, her voice dripping with venom as she blames him directly. She claims his departure was the catalyst for the clan's utter ruin. Then, his other former comrade reveals a new, sinister detail. A mysterious man had offered them the one thing they craved: a chance for revenge against him. The former companion then speaks the name of this mysterious benefactor, a name that echoes in the cold cell and strikes Desmond with the force of a physical blow: Jean. They confess the entire twisted scheme. Jean's plan was to abduct Dorothy, whom he saw as the most vulnerable, to lure Desmond into an inescapable trap. Their faces contort with fear as they recall trying to reason with their leader, Adele. But he was a man consumed, utterly blinded by a thirst for vengeance that made him deaf to their warnings. A painful flashback reveals the moment they were brutally shoved aside, their loyalty to their clan repaid with the cold steel of their comrades' blades. For daring to oppose the plan, they were intentionally left behind as a final act of humiliation. Their new role reduced to that of messengers. Now they deliver that message. He must go to the Crystal Caverns, and he must go alone, with absolutely no help from any S-rank adventurers. The unspoken threat hangs heavy in the stale prison air. Dorothy's life is the price for his disobedience. A mask of grim determination settles on Desmond's face as he asks the only question that now matters: how much time does he have? The answer is blunt, cold, and final. He has until dawn of the next day to rescue her. As the last sliver of sun vanishes, a desperate race against time officially begins. Without wasting so much as a breath, Desmond plunges into the ominous, gaping maw of the Crystal Caverns. The interior is a vast, cathedral-like cavern, both beautiful and deadly, with sharp stalactites hanging like daggers and countless crystals casting an eerie, ethereal glow. The stage for the confrontation is perfectly set. The sharp crunch of the single resolute step on the crystal floor echoes through the silence, announcing the hero's willing arrival into the heart of the trap. In the distance, high upon a ledge, his former companions stand waiting, with Dorothy held captive between them. Desmond and his friends emerge from the shadows, having followed him against his wishes. They all gaze up at the terrible scene, their hearts clenching at the sight of Dorothy bound and helpless on the cold, unforgiving ground. Dorothy's eyes lock with her friends, and a wave of profound relief washes over her, only to be immediately replaced by a fresh surge of fear for their safety. Below, a storm of anguish and pure rage begins to brew. Seeing her condition with his own eyes, any hesitation in Desmond's heart solidifies into an icy, unyielding fury. He is prepared to do whatever it takes. At last, the young man's gaze rises to confront his former leader, Adele, the mastermind behind this cruel betrayal. And as their eyes meet, a furious roar erupts from Adele, scolding Desmond for breaking the one simple rule: he was supposed to come alone. With a chilling smile, Jean dismisses Desmond's companions, branding them as insignificant weaklings unworthy of his attention. Outraged, Desmond confronts Adele, his voice pleading, We could have resolved this with words. It didn't have to come to this. Yeah, eating that. But Adele is lost to reason, consumed by a rage that erupts in a scream thick with years of bitter resentment. The fallen leader points an accusing finger, his words laced with venom. You and your curse ruined us. You destroyed our honor. Utterly baffled, Desmond can only listen as Adele blames him for their clan's demise, flatly denying the charge, completely unaware of any so-called curse. Jean lets out a cold, mocking laugh. How pathetic, blaming your own failures and bitterness on someone else. Ganun, his face contorted with fury, steps forward to defend Adele's twisted sense of justice and his right to vengeance. Ren's patience finally shatters. Enough, who are you? She demands, her voice sharp. And release Dorothy immediately. Ganon sneers defiantly, claiming that with Desmond's own enchantments at their command, they are invincible. Jean simply offers a malicious grin, savoring their naive arrogance. The mysterious man finally reveals a sliver of his identity, admitting his organization specializes in pillaging and conducting unorthodox research. As if on cue, Jean produces a syringe filled with a swirling crimson liquid, the vile fruit of his sinister experiments. In a shocking, brutal betrayal, Jean lunges and plunges the needle deep into the neck of an unsuspecting Adele. From their position below, Desmond and his friends can only watch, frozen in a state of sickening, absolute horror. Stumbling back, confused and in agony, Adele demands to know why. Jean scoffs cruelly. You are merely a tool, a means to an end. A grotesque transformation convulses through Adele's body as his arm twists and snaps, reshaping itself into a monstrous claw. An inhuman shriek of pure agony is torn from the ex-leader's lungs as the foul metamorphosis violently seizes his flesh. The horror intensifies as Adele's mouth rips open, distending into a nightmarish maw, his screams of pain echoing through the cavern. Ren's face is a mask of pure panic. A final blood-curdling scream tears through the air, marking the crescendo of the unholy transformation. Jean watches with a look of malicious satisfaction, murmuring his true plan aloud to let the weak destroy each other. The newly formed claw, a grotesque mockery of a hand, scrapes and scrabbles against the crystalline floor. The man once known as Adele is gone, replaced by a creature of pure, unending agony. It screams a testament to its torment. Desmond stares up at the beast, and for a fleeting, tragic instant, he sees a flicker of the man he knew, a silent plea for help just before the creature collapses. The monster's eyes snap open, blood red and blazing with a feral, uncontrollable rage. The horror on Desmond's face hardens into grim resolve. In its last moment of clarity, the creature whispers a desperate plea for help. Adele, Desmond screams, his voice raw with anguish. A violent shockwave of crimson energy erupts from Adele's body, completing the terrifying metamorphosis. The young man shields his face, reeling from the force of the blast and the sheer horror of the sight. When he lowers his arm, the shock in his eyes has been replaced by steel, accepting the nightmarish reality he must now confront. His gaze burns with an unwavering determination to stop the beast, as his body swells to a colossal size, covered in thick, slate-gray scales. The transformation culminates, revealing an imposing dragon, a magnificent and terrible creature weeping tears of blood from the sheer pain of its existence. Desmond stands paralyzed, his mind struggling to grasp the monstrous, tragic being that his former leader has become. Every last trace of Adele's humanity had vanished. Rena, paralyzed with fear, could only stare up at the colossal size of the creature that now towered over them. Desmond's face contorted in a mask of pure panic as the sheer magnitude of the threat finally crashed down on him. In his desperation, the young man screamed at his companions to flee while they still could, but his warning was drowned out by a deafening roar from the beast that shook the cavern to its very foundations. The ceiling above them began to fracture and groan, raining down a lethal shower of heavy rocks and razor-sharp crystals. Enormous fragments of the cavern plummeted toward the group, their frantic attempts to dodge proving useless. Desmond was hurled from his feet by the violent shockwave, struggling to rise amidst the swirling dust and chaos. As he finally pushed himself up, a horrifying sight met his eyes. His friends were buried beneath the crushing debris. Rena lay unconscious on the cold stone, her body battered by the falling rocks. Beside her, Garen had also been knocked out cold, left completely defenseless. A raw, desperate scream tore from Desmond's throat as he cried out to his fallen companions, gripped by the sudden, chilling fear for their lives. Then he felt an ominous presence looming behind him, stalking him in the shadows. Sheer panic seized his features as he realized he was now utterly alone against the monster. He swallowed hard, his mind unable to process that where his friend Adele once stood. There was now only a nightmarish, slavering creature, A flicker of determination cut through his fear, and his eye flared with an azure light as he activated his appraisal skill. A spectral status window materialized before him, revealing the beast's chilling identity. Its name was Adele, and its race was a hydra. A wave of disbelief washed over him as the text confirmed that his former leader had been twisted into a creature of myth and legend. The information was cold, clear, and undeniable. The monstrous hydra before him was, without a doubt, Adele. The beast roared with unbridled fury, an unholy sound that confirmed the unthinkable transformation of a human into a monster. Desmond gritted his teeth, consumed by a burning rage at such a cruel and heartless act. Upon analyzing the creature, Desmond's blood ran cold. Its stats were overwhelmingly, impossibly high. He saw that the creature's power was ranked A+, a force so immense that not even his most powerful enchantments could hope to match it. From within the settling dust, a familiar figure slowly rose to her feet. It was Dorothy, the elf they had come to rescue. Desmond rushed to her as she explained that the cave-in had shattered her bonds, allowing her to break free. But in the next instant, the young man's senses screamed of an imminent attack, and he lunged forward to protect Dorothy. The hydra's monstrous tail smashed violently into the ground, obliterating the very spot where they had been standing just seconds before. Terrified, Desmond realized their scattered group had been reunited, but the danger was now greater than ever, with their only exit sealed by a mountain of rubble. The young man came to a grim, unshakable conclusion. They had to defeat this beast if they were going to survive. Rena bravely offered to act as a decoy, asking Desmond to enhance her abilities for the battle. However, he flatly rejected the idea, knowing with dreadful certainty that even with his magic, they could never reach the level of power needed to defeat the Hydra. Rena, desperate, demanded that Desmond reveal his own plan now that he had dismissed hers. The young man's face hardened, his expression settling into a mask of grim and absolute determination, laced with an unsettling calm. Desmond revealed there was only one path forward. His companions stared at him, their faces a mixture of surprise and confusion, not understanding what he meant. The young mage then revealed his trump card, the layered enchantment technique. Dorothy and Rena reacted with pure horror as the elf recognized the name of the forbidden technique. They both tried to stop him, their voices filled with panic as they warned him that what he proposed was the ultimate taboo among mages. But Desmond insisted that despite the terrible risk, it was the only option they had left to survive. The young mage reveals the secret of the technique, a way to stack the same spell, multiplying its power infinitely. A spark of excitement ignites in Ren's eyes, but Desmond's next words extinguish that spark, clarifying that he himself will be the vessel for this perilous enchantment. A frantic Dorothy pulls a bewildered Ren aside, her voice trembling as she warns of the technique's horrific side effect, leaving the young warrior utterly stunned. She explains that once the enchantment fades, the user's very body is torn apart, a price that is almost always fatal. Overcome with desperation, Dorothy pleads with Desmond to reconsider, her voice cracking as she reminds him this is precisely why the spell is forbidden. He ignores her pleas, extending a hand, his resolve unshakable. He is determined to break the mage's most sacred taboo. Witnessing his iron will, Desmond finally reveals his personal connection to the monster. The beast, he confesses, is Adele, a name that hangs heavy in the air. A former member of his own party. A fleeting memory surfaces, painting a picture of a strained partnership that shattered in the most tragic way imaginable. With a voice laced with regret, Desmond admits his own role in his former leader's grotesque transformation, a burden of guilt he has carried alone. His gaze hardens with conviction. He insists that facing this demon is his burden to bear, and his alone, asking them to stay back. Dorothy watches him, her heart aching as she finally understands the profound depth of his pain. With silent purpose, the young mage turns his back on his friends and walks resolutely towards the beast, positioning himself as a lone figure against the towering, monstrous creature. He is ready for the final confrontation. The Hydra answers his challenge with a deafening roar, its many eyes burning with a crimson, unholy fury. A memory flashes through his mind, his new party, the laughter, the trust. It was with them he finally learned the meaning of camaraderie, a realization that now fills him with crushing regret. He whispers an admission to the wind he should have tried harder, should have spoken from the heart with his old team. The beast responds with a fresh wave of fury, as if echoing a shared regret for words left unsaid. From within the monster's rage, a flicker of Adele's pain emerges, the feeling of being abandoned by a team that had placed all its faith in Desmond. The creature's roar carries a clear accusation in the end. Desmond had abandoned them all, as it lunges forward, preparing a devastating strike. A hand suddenly clamps down on its scaled hide, halting its advance. It is Desmond. His voice raw as he yells that their unfinished business ends now. His voice cracks, heavy with the weight of his regret, as he screams a vow to finally correct the mistakes of his past. For a moment, the creature seems to falter, reacting to the raw emotion in his words as Desmond swears to atone for every past failure. But his response is not one of forgiveness. Instead, an ominous, swirling purple energy begins to gather within its gaping jaws. Primed to annihilate him, the beast unleashes a devastating torrent of dark energy directly at the lone mage. Yet Desmond stands his ground, facing the overwhelming tide of destruction alone. His gaze is unwavering, and he begins to chant an incantation of his own. His staff erupts in a blinding, protective light. The Hydra's dark breath slams into an unseen barrier, triggering a colossal explosion of raw power. As the smoke from this cataclysmic collision begins to clear, a system notification materializes, confirming that Desmond has activated his enchantment magic. A status window flickers into view, displaying a dramatic surge in his strength, vitality, agility, and resistance. But the young mage isn't finished. He immediately applies a second layer of the enchantment. A new notification confirms that his strength and vitality, along with his agility and resistance, have been duplicated. Still not satisfied, Desmond pushes the forbidden technique to its absolute limit, weaving a third layer of impossible power. He shows no sign of stopping. The mage then stacks a fourth layer, his abilities now multiplying exponentially with each cast. For a stark contrast, his original status window appears, revealing the tragically humble base stats he possessed before beginning this dangerous ritual. The very numbers defining his existence begin to warp and blur, skyrocketing at an impossible velocity. His statistics surge into the realm of the absurd, shattering the 10 million mark in the blink of an eye. A suffocating pressure radiates from his form, and with a single, deliberate step, the very earth shatters beneath his heel. His new status window paints a terrifying picture of power so colossal, with stats that could challenge a deity. Fueled by a righteous and defiant fury, Desmond unleashes a raw, guttural roar at the beast, signaling the start of his final confrontation with Adele. The Hydra responds instantly, lunging forward to strike, its many maws gaping, ready to rip him to shreds. The creature's multitude of crimson eyes fixate on Desmond, a flicker of recognition in their depths acknowledging the immense power now pouring from him. Bathed in a brilliant golden aura, the young mage stands his ground, his determination an unbreakable shield. With no hesitation, the creature descends upon him, intent on ending the fight with one crushing bite. The Hydra's gargantuan jaws eclipse the sky, looming over the solitary mage, poised to swallow him whole. Yet just as they are about to snap shut, a blinding flare of power halts the brutal assault dead in its tracks. Far from the epicenter of the clash, his companions can only watch in abject terror, their hearts pounding with fear for their friend's life. With a display of truly superhuman strength, Desmond's hand shoots up, seizing one of the beast's colossal fangs. The young mage, with nothing but his bare hands, holds the creature's jaws at bay, a testament to his newfound, incredible power. Then, with a single fluid motion, Desmond heaves the colossal Hydra off balance, violently wrenching it to the side. A visible strain crosses his face as he channels the overwhelming power coursing through him. His teeth gritted in exertion, the young mage lets out a furious roar, finally unleashing the entirety of the pent-up energy raging within his body. His golden aura erupts outwards in a concussive blast, pulverizing the very ground around him. As he braces to attack, the Hydra, momentarily stunned by this raw display of strength, bellows a cry of mingled surprise and pain. Before it can even begin to recover, Desmond launches himself at the beast's titanic frame, moving with blinding velocity, streaking across the battlefield like a bolt of golden lightning. His eyes lock onto his target, instantly calculating the precise point for his next devastating blow. The mage funnels his power into a single fist, which begins to crackle with an unimaginable energy. With the force of a meteor, he slams it directly into the creature's flank. The beast convulses from the sheer force of the impact, reeling from the immense damage inflicted by the single powerful blow. His friends can only stare in stunned disbelief, their minds struggling to process the impossible feat they just witnessed. Enraged, the Hydra retaliates, spewing a torrent of dark energy from his maws. But Desmond meets the blast with an icy glare, his resolve now harder than diamond. Switching tactics, the beast unleashes a brutal swipe of its claws, aiming to crush him without a shred of mercy. Yet, the young mage stands his ground, unmoved by the impact that throws up a thick curtain of dust and debris. A defiant calm settles over him as he prepares to counter. his golden aura flaring with renewed intensity. He raises a hand and intercepts the attack, bringing the creature's gigantic claw to a dead halt. Gritting his teeth, the mage braces against the beast's overwhelming might, raw energy crackling around his hand as he wrestles for control against the monstrous appendage. Planting his feet, Desmond shatters the ground beneath him once more, preparing to unleash his full power with a thunderous war cry. Desmond erupts in an explosion of golden light, channeling his tremendous strength, and begins to lift the gigantic hydra clean over his head. His companions can only watch the spectacle, utterly dumbfounded by the incredible feat unfolding before them. In one explosive motion, he hurls the colossal beast into the sky, sending it careening across the battlefield. The young mage takes a moment to steady his breath, the incredible display of strength having done nothing to diminish his burning determination. From afar, the group watched in disbelief as the hydra was so easily overwhelmed. The colossal beast let out a roar of pure, unadulterated fury. His crimson eyes blaze with a seething hatred, a direct result of its humiliation. As it crashed back to the ground, the beast confronted Desmond once more, its cavernous maw gaping open for a devastating counterattack. A sinister, dark energy began to coil around the hydra as its body grotesquely swelled and warped, twisting into an even more monstrous form. Desmond's friends felt a chill crawl down their spines, sensing the danger had escalated to a terrifying new level. Without warning, the hydra unleashed its ultimate, devastating assault, a crushing tail swipe engineered to utterly annihilate its foe. The impact was so cataclysmic that the very foundations of the cavern trembled violently, sending a suffocating cloud of dust and debris billowing into the air. While his companions watched with hearts full of dread, the blonde elf offered a serene smile, her faith in Desmond's power absolute and unshaken. The aftermath of the violent clash was completely obscured by a dense shroud of dust. The beast peered into the massive crater it had carved into the earth, its multiple crimson eyes scanning for any trace of its enemy's remains. A triumphant malice gleamed within them, certain of its victory. But from the settling dust, Desmond rocketed forth completely unscathed, launching himself through the air with a furious war cry, aimed directly at the creature's head. The young mage cocked back his fist, which pulsed with incandescent golden energy, his gaze a burning inferno of absolute determination. He was poised to deliver the final, decisive blow. The hydra's eye widened in sheer terror, the reflection of the descending mage its last horrifying sight. With an explosive flash of golden light, Desmond's fist connected, striking the hydra squarely in its massive head. The beast's silhouette was frozen in a silent roar as the radiant energy completely consumed its head. Its colossal body was sent twisting through the air, utterly destabilized by the final, overwhelming attack. The hydra came crashing down to earth, its head slamming into the ground with a final, definitive thud that left it utterly motionless. From afar, his companions could only stare at the beast's lifeless form, still reeling from the sheer magnitude of the victory. The young mage landed softly on the ground, his brilliant golden aura slowly dissipating as he fought to catch his breath in the aftermath of the brutal battle. His friends struggled to process what they had just witnessed, questioning if he had truly vanquished the beast. But then, the hydra's corpse began to emanate an ominous purple glow, a chilling signal that the danger had not yet passed. The blonde elf let out a sharp cry of alarm, instantly realizing the situation had just taken a dark and unexpected turn. Desmond, however, simply offered a wink towards the burgeoning threat, his confidence utterly unshakable. In the next moment, the purple light erupted outwards, revealing that the hydra was never what it appeared to be. From the creature's fading remains, a dark and menacing humanoid silhouette began to rise. Its monstrous claws clawed at the stone floor, anchoring it as its true, terrifying nature was unveiled. The creature's form began to rapidly revert, shrinking and transforming back into a human body, where the hydra once lay. A gray-haired man now slumped, unconscious on the cold ground. His companions saw that Desmond had returned to normal, the overwhelming power no longer visible around him. The young mage stared down at the defeated man, a look of pure shock on his face, realizing this was the true enemy, hidden behind the monstrous facade of the beast. A flicker of recognition crossed Desmond's face as he gazed upon the man at his feet. From a safe distance, the rest of the group slowly began to process the victory, a mixture of profound relief and lingering astonishment washing over them. But while his friends began to celebrate their hard-won triumph, Desmond's attention remained utterly fixed on the mysterious adversary lying before him. The defeated man managed to mutter something about a complete victory before finally succumbing to unconsciousness. A self-satisfied smirk played on Desmond's lips as the last vestiges of his golden aura crackled around him. But suddenly, A deeply ominous sensation shot through his body, a feeling like something vital was shattering within him. His hand began to tremble uncontrollably, a terrifying sign that something was terribly wrong. He staggered, losing his balance as his legs suddenly refused to obey his commands, shaking violently beneath him. It was then the young mage realized with dawning horror that he was suffering the devastating backlash of his own immense power. Frozen in terror, his companions can only watch as his body convulses, a raw scream of unendurable agony tearing from his lips. A cascade of alerts flashes through his fading vision, each one a grim testament to the catastrophic damage racking his very being. Yet, through the searing torment, he forces himself to remain standing, his will an unyielding fortress against the tide of pain. The pain crests into an unbearable wave, twisting his features into a mask of pure primal suffering. At last, his mortal frame can take no more. He crashes to the earth in a heap, the violent collapse stunning his friends into silence. Helpless panic grips the group as they stare at their fallen friend, while darkness encroaches on Desmond's consciousness, torn apart by the overwhelming toll. With the last flicker of awareness, a horrifying realization dawns upon him. A creeping paralysis has seized every inch of his body. He feels the very threads of his existence unraveling, a brutal price for shattering the limits of his own power. The tense air is shattered by a sudden flurry of ice crystals materializing from nothing, causing the alarm group to spin around. Stunned by this unexpected display of magic, they watch as the gray-haired man rises, his voice raw with fury as he bellows Desmond's name. He levels a damning accusation, roaring that Desmond betrayed him in an attempt to end his life, exposing a bitter history between them. But the blonde girl fires back, her voice laced with venom, branding him the most despicable of adventurers, as the dark-haired elf quakes with silent, seething rage. In her heart, she wishes him a fate worse than death, but the escalating shouts finally snap the man's patience, and he roars for silence, his tolerance utterly exhausted. His sudden explosion of anger shocks the blonde girl and the dwarf into a stunned stillness. The young blonde turns on the elf, her own frustration boiling over, questioning her friend's apparent coldness in the face of Desmond's sacrifice. Through a veil of tears, the elf explains that Desmond could have used enchantments, a path that wouldn't have cost him his life, and the gray-haired man listens, his focus sharpening. His hardened expression begins to crack, shifting as the profound weight of her words begins to sink in. She reveals a terrible secret. The technique of layering enchantments is forbidden because it utterly annihilates the caster's body from within. With a voice fractured by grief, the blonde girl adds that a direct confrontation was never necessary, that he could have been defeated from afar. He could have been made to collapse under his own power. She cries, screaming that the technique is not only dangerous but outlawed by the highest magical authorities. Her words become a desperate sob as she recounts pleading with Desmond to stop, revealing he understood the cost and deliberately held back his power. A wave of shock washes over the gray-haired man as the truth hits him like a physical blow. Desmond chose self-destruction over his annihilation. She explains, her voice trembling, that Desmond faced him head-on because he was trying to save him, because he still saw him as a true comrade. She scorns him, spitting that it was his own blindness to Desmond's noble heart that led him to cast him out in the first place. The adversary reels, processing the staggering truth that the young man he had branded a traitor was, in fact, his most loyal companion. As the magnitude of his mistake crashes down on him, the elf desperately pleads, begging him to cause no more harm to Desmond. He lies broken and unresponsive on the cold ground, his eyes vacant, lost to the world and the drama his sacrifice has ignited. Without a sound, a new figure emerges from the shadows, observing the distraught group and their fallen hero from a high vantage point. The newcomer clicks his tongue in disdain, viewing the entire emotional scene as a pathetic waste of time as he openly mocks their melodrama. He dismisses it all as meaningless noise. But in that moment, something clicks for the blonde girl, her eyes flying wide with sudden dawning recognition. A cruel smirk spread across the silver-haired man's face as crackling energy enveloped him, his short sword gleaming as he drew it from its sheath. He was poised to end them all, his expression twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. Convinced of his effortless victory, he unleashed a calamitous wave of violet energy, aimed squarely at Desmond's comrades. The force of the blast ripped through them, scattering their bodies like leaves in a storm. From where he lay, Desmond could only watch, a storm of helpless fury raging within him. The assailant then turned, stalking toward Desmond with a chilling promise his end was now. The silver-haired menace loomed over him, savoring the moment. "Crawl," he sneered, "and die like the insect you are." A towering pillar of raw, violet power descended upon the defenseless Desmond. Paralyzed by terror, the young mage could only stare as oblivion rushed to meet him. His eyes shot wide with desperation, his mind screaming in denial of the inevitable. But then, in a flash of movement, a hand shot out, an impossible gesture, defying the unfolding catastrophe. The gray-haired man, his former captain, threw himself directly into the path of the attack. He took the full, devastating force of the blast. Desmond watched, his world tilting on its axis, his mind unable to fathom why this man, his adversary, was now his shield. Rage contorted the attacker's face, his killing blow stolen from him. His fury quickly melted into sheer disbelief at the shocking turn of events. The very man who had once been his rival now stood as his protector, absorbing the cataclysmic energy that was meant for him. Desmond's heart hammered against his ribs, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion. Why? Why would his former captain make such a sacrifice? The gray-haired man gritted his teeth, his entire body trembling as he battled against the overwhelming torrent of power. A desperate scream tore from Desmond's throat, shouting his protector's name into the chaos. The sheer force of the spell was so immense it fractured the very ground beneath the man's feet. But it was too much. The energy finally overwhelmed him, blasting him backward with bone-shattering force. He crashed to the earth, grievously wounded. Anguish and confusion warred inside Desmond as he crawled toward the fallen figure, demanding to know why. Through choked sobs, the young mage pleaded for an answer. Why did you save me after everything? Why? Summoning the last of his strength, the dying man, his face a mask of blood, simply whispered for him to be silent. Desmond fell silent, watching as a faint, resigned smile touched his former captain's lips. This, he breathed, is what comrades do. We protect our own. There. No matter the cost. The words hung in the air as Desmond lay shattered, the weight of that ultimate sacrifice crushing him. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the dust and grime, as he whispered the name of the man who gave his life for him, Adele. Yes. With a heartless sneer, the attacker drove his boot into Adele's broken form, a final act of utter contempt. The brutal impact forced a spray of blood from the dying man's lips. His life was flickering out. A primal scream of helpless rage erupted from Desmond. Get away from him. The silver-haired man simply cupped a hand to his ear, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. His eyes, however, burned with pure malice. I'm sorry, he mocked. I don't listen to the requests of dead men. Desmond's teeth ground together, his face a canvas of impotent rage and soul-crushing despair. And then, from the shadows, a blinding blast of azure energy shot toward the villain. The villain's arrogant smirk vanished, his jaw dropping in stunned surprise at the unforeseen assault. As the dust settled, two figures emerged from the gloom. You held on well, one of them said. They were two warrior women, one clad in brilliant armor, the other bearing a sinister smile, both radiating an aura of absolute command. From the ground, Desmond's eyes widened in recognition at the sight of his saviors, but the villain merely whirled around, his shock curdling into fury as he grit his teeth. He realized with a jolt that he was facing two legendary female warriors, and a wave of frustration washed over him at their immense power as he brandished a syringe filled with a sinister red liquid. A bitter regret flooded his mind. He should have finished the job before they arrived. Staring into the warriors' impassive gaze, the cornered villain snarled, ordering them not to take another step. In a swift, cowardly move, he seized Desmond, pressing the needle to his throat and using the young mage as a human shield. The cold tip of the needle grazed Desmond's skin, a single push away from delivering its deadly payload. As a crazed laugh escaped the villain's lips, boasting he could extinguish the boy's life in a heartbeat. But suddenly, lances of pure blue energy erupted from the shadows, impaling the villain and silencing his threat with brutal finality. His eyes widened in sheer disbelief as a searing pain ripped through him from the surprise attack, and a strangled gasp escaped his throat. He stared down at the shimmering energy stakes that had skewered his body, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. And in that moment of frozen horror, a sudden clarity dawned on Desmond. He finally understood the truth behind one of the warriors, remembering her infamous nickname had nothing to do with beauty. It was earned through something far more terrifying. The cerulean energy crackled with raw power, ensnaring the silver-haired man in an inescapable, paralyzing grip. He writhed in agony, utterly powerless against the force that bound him, as the armored warrior moved in to effortlessly subdue him. Her imposing figure cast a long shadow, her icy gaze filled with absolute contempt as her voice, cold as steel, commanded him to be silent. With a single, decisive motion, she slammed the villain face first into the cold stone floor, his defeat sealed by her overwhelming strength. It all clicked for Desmond then. Her moniker was born from a relentless ice-cold cruelty she displayed on the battlefield. The armored warrior surveyed her handiwork with an unnervingly calm detachment, proving to all why they called her the ice-blooded princess. Her companion let out a light-hearted scoff, mocking the defeated man and declaring that he was utterly finished. The ice-blooded princess, however, cut her off with a sharp reprimand for her carefree attitude, ordering her to see to the wounded before kneeling beside Desmond, a flicker of concern in her eyes. He weakly asked if the nightmare was finally over, a bitter smile touching his lips as he revealed the terrible truth his wounds were a backlash from his own power, rendering any healing magic useless. His voice cracked with despair as he lamented that his journey as an adventurer was over, the weight of a broken childhood promise crushing his spirit. The scene then dissolved, shifting to an imposing castle, signaling the end of one violent chapter and the beginning of another. Inside the castle's hallowed halls, a quiet corridor led toward the recovery wing, a place of supposed calm after the storm. For though the battle had been won, a new and deeply personal struggle was just beginning for the young mage. A polished sign above one door confirmed their destination, the infirmary, where Desmond's fate would be decided. As he started his recovery, Desmond found himself blushing, completely overwhelmed by the sheer amount of attention he was receiving. His new companions fussed over him, even trying to feed him, but surrounded by the concerned warriors. Desmond insisted he could manage on his own. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over him, and just then, the door burst open, and his old guildmates came pouring into the room. They too offered to take care of him, their enthusiasm almost knocking him over, and seeing all his friends gathered, both old and new. Desmond felt a warmth spread through him. His first thought was for their well-being, asking about their own recovery. But one of his old friends then somberly recalled the grim rumors that had spread about his incurable condition. But as he spoke, the adventurer's somber expression slowly transformed into a wide grin, hinting that the story took an unexpected turn as he joyfully revealed that, by some miracle, the devastating side effects had been completely nullified. A sacrifice made by the commander, who had absorbed the devastating blow, his face a mask of anguish. Desmond confessed his crushing guilt, explaining how the commander had thrown himself in harm's way to save him. The commander, offering a faint smile, urged him not to carry that burden, but to understand it was a choice made for the future. He spoke of a leader's sacred duty to shield his own, adding that his time as an adventurer had already reached its twilight. Hearing the commander's noble words, one of his female comrades was visibly overcome with emotion. Desmond protested, his voice cracking with worry that the commander's life would be forever altered, reminding him that he had resorted to a forbidden art. His comrades gently interjected, reminding him that he was pardoned, as his actions were a desperate act of self-preservation. The commander reassured him again with unwavering calm, insisting that he must let go of the phantom problems he'd conjured in his mind. He then revealed a stark truth the higher-ups had deemed a healthy Desmond far more valuable than a veteran on the verge of retirement. With a surge of pride in his voice, he declared it an honor for an old soldier to shield a talent as bright and promising as his. In a sudden, dramatic shift, Desmond's despair gave way to a flicker of hope as he revealed the commander's condition was not without a cure. He spoke of the very dungeon they were in, a place of untold secrets, where undiscovered treasures might hold the key to a complete recovery. He whispered of a legendary relic, an artifact rumored to exist within the dungeon's depths, capable of mending any physical wound. A ghost of a smile touched the commander's lips, as he conceded that such a place was the only logical location for an item of that power. He then bestowed a new mission upon Desmond. "Find it," he commanded, "as a testament to our bond." Clenching his fist, the young mage accepted the sacred charge, his spirit ignited with a fierce new purpose. His eyes blazed with resolve as he gave his solemn oath to see it through. His comrades, caught up in the moment, eagerly pledged their support for the quest. From his recovery bed, the commander informed Desmond that another duty awaited him, one of great and immediate importance. The scene dissolves to a vast guild hall, where a restless murmur swells and echoes off the high stone walls. A sea of adventurers had convened, their faces etched with anticipation as they awaited a crucial announcement. Anxious whispers snaked through the assembly, rumors of the commander's condition fueling fears about the brigade's uncertain future. A sharp, commanding voice boomed from the grand balcony above, demanding silence from the agitated crowd of adventurers. An official confirmed the grave news of the commander's hospitalization, before announcing a new mission and an imminent change in leadership. The sound of solitary footsteps echoed on the balcony, stretching the tension in the air to a breaking point before the grand reveal. Then, to the collective shock of everyone present, Desmond was named the interim commander of the 5th Brigade, The hall erupted in a wave of disbelieving gasps and astonished whispers. Blinking under the sudden, intense scrutiny of 100 pairs of eyes, Desmond nervously approached the railing to address the crowd. He stumbled at first, openly admitting his own perceived inadequacies, yet his voice rang with an unwavering resolve to lead them forward. Just as he braced himself for a storm of protest, a single, powerful voice of support cut through the noise, declaring that no one had any objections. It was his old guildmates, who now roared their approval, pledging their unwavering loyalty and vowing to silence any who dared to doubt him. Deeply moved by the profound trust of his comrades, Desmond stood taller, a newfound confidence settling over him as he prepared to embrace his new responsibility. With tears of gratitude welling in his eyes, Desmond formally accepted his new duty, vowing to pour his entire being into the role. Now vested with his new authority, the young mage departed the hall to embark on his first mission as their leader, sent off by the thunderous cheers of his friends. His comrades are celebrating his promotion, eager to follow his lead. But from the shadows, two female warriors watch, already plotting how to join his next grand adventure. The one they call the ice-blooded princess finds a rare blush creeping onto her cheeks as she admits her desire to go, earning a playful jab from her companion about her sudden bashfulness. A single bandaged hand raises in a farewell salute to Desmond and his team, a silent wish for fortune on the perilous journey ahead. As they step out onto the bustling street, one female adventurer boldly makes a play for Desmond's attention, much to the green-eyed envy of her friend. The young mage is caught off guard, completely baffled by the sudden rivalry erupting between the two women vying for his notice. But his focus is drawn upward, to a hospital window, where the sight of his commander, weakened and relying on a breathing apparatus, strikes him with a heavy blow. The fragile image is a stark reminder of what's at stake, of the mission's crushing urgency. Yet, even in his frail state, the commander offers a gesture of unwavering confidence. It's a silent promise of success. And Desmond answers with a brilliant smile, his heart swelling with renewed hope. With their spirits ignited, the small party turns and sets forth, leaving the guild hall in their wake. High above, from the lone window, the commander observes their departure, a faint, satisfied smile gracing his lips. The world then dissolves, reforming into a verdant forest beneath an endless, clear sky at the very threshold of their quest. At long last, the team stands before the dungeon's maw, an imposing, dark chasm that seems to swallow the light. Stepping into his role as leader, Desmond readies himself to lead them into the oppressive darkness, but fueled by sheer adrenaline. One of the female warriors impulsively surges forward. She completely disregards her companion's frantic warnings, and in that instant, the scene shatters, flashing back to a different time, revealing a mysterious silver-haired man, broken and bleeding. The camera closes in on his face, a canvas of pain. His features slack in unconsciousness after a battle that clearly left him devastated. A shadowy female figure materializes beside the fallen youth, her voice sharp as she chides him for his foolish recklessness. A torrent of potent healing magic pours from her outstretched hand, wrapping the young man in an emerald aura as she unleashes a vast, restorative incantation. This wave of life-giving energy engulfs him completely. He chokes, his body convulsing against the overwhelming surge of power as his grievous wounds begin to knit themselves shut. His eyelids flutter and then slowly part, the brilliant green light of the spell reflecting in his pupils as consciousness painfully returns to him. Suspended in midair, a furious vow escapes his lips. He will never forgive the woman who brought him to this agonizing brink. The scene abruptly shifts to a woman with verdant hair, who regards him with an unmistakable air of condescending superiority. "So, you found someone useful?" she asks. With a fist clenched in simmering rage, the silver-haired man confirms it. He has found his mark, a man named Desmond Stiv, a mage wielding a most peculiar form of enchantment magic. A sinister glint of violet flashes in his eyes, betraying the dark and twisted plan taking shape within him. A horrific memory assaults his mind, a vision of himself being torn apart by a vicious, crimson-hued magic he could not comprehend. In the memory, he is screaming, his face a mask of pure terror as he desperately pleads with a woman named Kate to stop. He begs her to cease the recovery magic, crying out that his body is breaking under the strain. The vision then pulls back to reveal the sinister woman, watching his agony with cold, detached amusement. With a chillingly casual air, she murmurs that she seems to have overdone it with her plaything yet again. But then, her violet eyes gleam with a new, predatory interest as her thoughts drift to Desmond, finding him to be a truly fascinating new specimen.